Nice.
Oh, shit.
We going?
I forgot that we kind of have some news that you texted me about while I was in Yosemite, and I just didn't write it in my notes, but I just now remembered it. Yeah.
Wow.
And
Wait, hold on. You got to do the intro, right?
I do,
Okay.
but I also forgot to get a quote. Let me see. Yeah, we had this voodoo guy cast a spell on the movie while I was in Australia. It was crazy. That's a quote from Richard Stanley, paraphrasing.
Yes, of course.
Because I didn't have time to look up a quote. I say I didn't have time. I just totally forgot. I just completely...
Accountability is number one for the Neon Crew podcast.
Yes.
Just for the listeners out there.
If I can't hold myself accountable, then I can't hold myself in any other way.
Yeah,
and I don't want to live my life
you're
like
going to
that.
be like a New Line media film.
Exactly, right? It's just going to be a mess. It's going to be disorganized chaos. I'm going to have to change things at the last minute, and it's just going to end up a big pile of shit.
Not a prelude.
No, not a prelude at all. But I'm Kyle, by the way.
And I'm Mac.
Hey, thanks for listening to our episode. This is episode 48, I believe.
Cool.
And so I was on vacation for about over a week in California. And while I was over there, our episode came out on Sunday. And I think maybe like a couple days later, I got a text from Mac that said, dude, I think we killed Cormac McCarthy. And I was like, this is the first I'm hearing about this. So I was like, what? Huh? What the fuck you talking about? And so I looked it up, and yeah, Cormac McCarthy passed away I think it was June 13th.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Very close.
2 days after our episode came out about our discussion of The Road and us mentioning that he was attached to be a producer on the Blood Meridian film that they're adapting.
Yes.
And I was in the middle of reading Blood Meridian when you sent me that text.
Oh, really?
I had the book in my hand. I was with my friends, and we were just relaxing outside, enjoying the views. I was reading the book. I was being a nice little nature boy, kind of reclusive, reading my book, you know. You know me, a little hipster attitude going on. And then you send me a text saying, dude, I think we killed Cormac McCarthy. I was like, buh? So that was startling.
Well, I'm just saying, for a guy that I've only talked about probably 2 times in my life, he probably gets mentioned once every 6 years.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll say with or without being attached to No Country. You know? Like that's so I found it wild that we do one freaking movie review on him and then he passes away.
I know. I kind of told Mac, I said, it's like he listened to our episode and then was satisfied with our discussion. So then he was satisfied with life, and then he departed.
Yes.
You know, which might be kind of a morbid way of looking at it. I don't know, but
it depends. I mean, if that's really what happened, we're good.
Yeah. if we're not speaking blasphemies right now.
Yeah. It's only for God to know, though.
Yes. Only for God to know. Only God forgives.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to do that to him.
No, not at all. I think his soul would be restless. He'd come back from the dead and he'd just assault me in the street. But I have been reading Blood Meridian, and it's been a nice read so far.
Yeah. So I saw it on Facebook. We'll bleep that in post. And one of I think my English teacher when I was in high school, a really good teacher, was commenting on, he passed away, and then he said he was reading Blood Meridian's one of the most disturbing books he's ever read. So it's kind of like I saw that you had that, and I was like, oh, I wonder if Kyle has the same feelings on that.
I'm not super far into it. I am maybe 6 or 7 chapters in, so like not even halfway yet. But there has been a lot of dark things that have happened, and it's more of like kind of a neo-Western sort of feel.
Yes, that's what Wiki said.
Yes. I base my whole life and my whole language off of what Wikipedia tells me.
I'm glad that you got that feel from reading it. I'm not assuming that you remember the Wiki.
No, it's
as he sets his phone down.
It shows you like the really dark sides of humanity, which is very prevalent in The Road, of course. And
that's
kind of acts as like not really a companion piece, but they go well together as far as like, the reading material and stuff. And John Hillcoat is or was, depending on if they decide to move forward with the project, the director of the Blood Meridian movie that's supposedly going to be made.
Yes.
Now, with Cormac McCarthy's passing and his involvement with the movie, who knows how far that will go now, or if it'll go at all. But I'm curious. I'm sure they'll continue with it in some way, but it might not necessarily be the exact same vision that they had for it.
Well, they make movies about this, where the author needs this project to be completed, and in order to have it done, they have to make a sacrifice.
Oh.
And having already been of age.
So the movie you're saying is going to come out to at least 97% on Rotten Tomatoes because of the sacrifice that
I'll say it's going to get made.
McCarthy gave.
He talked to the devil, and the devil said that, and then, well, if we want it to be good, you're going to have to add on.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I trust Hillcoat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, we're set to go. But yeah, rest in peace, Cormac McCarthy. We didn't mean to kill you. If we did, we're sorry. I'm glad we got to talk about it.
Yeah. I thought it was just wild. I was like, I couldn't believe, I was like, the timing.
The timing was... it was something else. It was the best timing or the worst timing, depending on how you look at it.
Isn't that a Charles Dickens book?
Yes, there was the best of timing and the worst of timing. His famous quote, Charles Dickman. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have any news or anything.
Yeah, you do. You went to Yosemite?
Yosemite. I went over there. This was my second time over there. It was not nearly as hot as the first time I went. First time I went was in 2021, and it was 95 degrees every single day with no rain.
Oh,
and this time it was a lot cooler. It was between the 50s and the 70s, so it was a lot more manageable.
It's a wide range.
Climbing up the mountain was a lot better for that temperature than, near 100.
Yeah.
So able to hike up Chilnawana Falls a little bit better this time around. It didn't kick my ass nearly as much. And Megan did a really good job, too, because she's from Louisiana. She's used to living below sea level for, a good portion of her life. And I was just really proud of her for making it up there, and not being in elevation and her not really having that hiking experience before. She did a really good job. So
sweet. Shout
out to Megan. You did an awesome job.
Way to go.
I'm proud of you. Everybody give her a virtual hug if you can.
Nice.
Hugs in the comments.
Yeah. Send them. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah. No, it was good. Gideon got a little sick towards the end. I think what happened was he had severely high blood pressure, which I don't think he's gotten that before, because he's been to Yosemite way more times than I have been. Mm-hmm. And the last couple of days he just got really sick, and it was the most sick I think I've seen him since when he first got COVID in late 2019, before they even knew what COVID was. Oh yeah, so that was hurting him a little bit, kind of worried about the boy. We need our music boy around.
Right.
But he pulled through. He's fine. He's back now.
There we go.
Yeah. But other than
cheers.
Other than that hiccup, it was a good trip. We just kind of relaxed, enjoyed the views, saw the falls, went to the valley. The valley was beautiful. Watched the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy on the plane.
Nice.
And we squeezed in RRR. And that is now one of Megan's favorite movies.
I'm not shocked.
Yeah.
That movie is so that in your face, fast paced, really just vibrant.
I think most people who watch it would enjoy it. It's one of those movies where I think if you want to show someone a good movie and you want them to like it, that's almost like a guaranteed hit.
Cheeseburger done right.
Yeah. Cheeseburger done right is exactly what that is. That's like a Culver's burger right there.
Yeah. I was about to say, because it's not, time-wise, I don't think I could sit down and just be like, I'm going to throw this on.
No, of course not. It's bulky as shit.
Yeah, but it's probably, if you give it some time, if you were having a summer party and you wanted to have a movie on in the background, I could see a bunch of people rolling their eyes. But I really think you could just pull that on.
Yeah.
It would draw enough attention for the 5-10 minutes that people go in the house, to grab whatever, and they go, what's this? And then you just watch it, and you're kind of like, oh, wow, nice, and walk away, and you could easily come back to it, not even know what's going on, and still be drawn in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's the not to scene. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like what this movie's about.
Dude, anyway, just them broing out.
Them broing out, the end fight sequence, even the beginning with Raju fighting that horde of people when he's a cop and he's got that sick mustache.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God. I think that mustache on that actor is one of the reasons why I keep mine so prominent now.
You have to.
It's inspiring, really.
They're it's such a nice stash.
It really is. It's like 10 out of 10. Super just well defined, and he's got like a perfect face for it too.
And this is like totally off tangent, but the first time I fell in love with mustaches was in 2009, I want to say.
We're throwing it back,
dude. The skipper of the fucking Royals had so that's a movie stash. I believe it was Ned Yost.
Yost.
I think he was the skipper of the Royals, 2009, I want to say. And that's the first time I've ever noticed like a really good mustache. And since then, that's like
this one.
You got to do 2009 Ned Yost.
Okay.
See if you'd have, and it's
2009.
Yeah, I'm hoping to God that he was the skipper because that's the only reason why his name's sticking with me. Because I remember watching one of their games, and I was making the joke that you'd get your like a hair comb caught in the threads of the stash. That's how thick it was.
They do get caught in a lot of things. I will be the first to tell you that, especially when you're eating. It just gets in your mouth all the time, like.
The stash?
Yeah. Just like if you're eating wings or like a burger or like especially a sandwich, it just like kind of burrows in there.
Yeah.
I can't find any good pictures of him right now.
Maybe we'll save it for the end. If we find something,
throw
it on the YouTube channel for anyone that wants to see a really good mustache. I will Google it and give it to Kyle after this.
Yeah. We'll get it to you. But right now, all I'm seeing is like clean shaven pics.
It might not. That's what I'm saying. It might not be Ned Yost. The Royals had a very tough stretch.
Okay.
And the guys, it could be Skip Schumacher. They had one other guy that was in there in this time frame, like around that time, because they ended up being really good in 2014 and 15. But I remember 2009, we were at like one of the college football houses. We had the Tigers on, and I just like first time that guy walked out there and he kind of did like one of those things where it's like making sure this is good for the cameras.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time, except there's no cameras.
Right? Yeah, that's a different. He walked out, and I was like, damn.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you don't really see mustaches that often. Like at that point you did. I think they'd been kind of not banned, but
there was definitely a perception of them for a while of them just being kind of creepy.
Yes.
Like
depends on how
especially if it was in that time period, because like you could get away with it in like the 70s and 80s. It's like, okay, they got the porno stash.
I think the 90s is when they drifted out.
Yes.
And then the 2000s with the modern age, with the internet, and all of a sudden all of like the well-dressed guys and the comb over, like that's when it took over. So mustaches were completely out.
Yeah.
And you only really saw like older dudes rocking mustaches.
I was going to say, if you had a mustache, you were either an older man who had a mustache for a long time, like my dad.
Yeah.
Or if you were a young guy with a mustache, you were a fucking pedophile.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of those things like, what are you doing with that?
Yeah, it's like, what gives you the right?
Yeah.
Remember
it's like, it was kind of like the signal to let people know, but it was like an underground signal.
It's like they had the mustache. It was kind of cheesy. They had like the big ass like bifocals, and they had like the pink like button up polo shirts, and they weren't allowed near parks at all.
That's what I'm saying. Pool parties at that, but you got to really know those people that come over.
Yeah, that was not the time or place for it, but it's made a resurgence, thankfully.
I'm telling you, and I'm happy for it. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
I'm happy for it, and that was the first time but anyway, so the RRR, when we threw that on, and that guy came out with his mustache, I was like, damn.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Prominent.
I was like, sheesh, this guy's one of the main characters? Fuck yeah. And then he had a beard on for like most of the movie. I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
It kind of diminishes the distinguishdness of the stash,
Yes, I agree, but it's
not that he looked bad with a beard, but
no, it's true. I mean, you get 2 hours into that film and you just kind of start thinking like, I wonder what if you would have trimmed the neck hair and the cheeks,
the neck hair, the cheeks, give it them a little stubble, like some Henry Cavill Mission Impossible shit.
But keep the
stash like nice and proud,
That's what we're saying.
Yeah. And then I was happy when he donned it later in the movie. I was like, hell yeah, we're back to form.
Yes.
And then later he looked like Indian Jesus with his long hair and his beard.
That's it's a movie.
It's a movie. That character changes his looks quite a bit. We definitely got off on a mustache tangent, but yeah,
it's okay.
We got through most of the Sam Raimi trilogy. We still have like half of Spider-Man 3 to go, so we need to finish that up at some point. But yeah, the first one, I would definitely love to talk about the Sam Raimi trilogy because I feel like there's a lot to delve into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned that.
We've mentioned this many times before.
So I was like, I've gone back and watched him from like an actual viewer perspective as opposed to, oh, my childhood's back on the TV again.
Yeah. Nostalgia goggles.
Yeah, and it's wild.
Yeah, no, there's definitely things to say about them.
That's the era of superhero movies. Like they took themselves way too seriously, and just yes.
We'll get into that one day. I think that'll be a recommendation from either of us, or maybe it'll be like a mutual recommendation at one point.
We'll pause. We'll pause the recommendations and just say we're both agreeing to this, and then it'll just be the turn again.
I would agree to that 100%.
Same here, because I could easily. Sam. That's one that Sam could probably hop on.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I made a post on YouTube community and Facebook about Sam being on, but in case you didn't see the update, Sam could not join today because of some
scheduling
obligations.
Conflicts.
Yes, scheduling conflicts, all that sort of thing.
It's a buzzword.
We have lives, damn it. We have to live them for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. If I could just do this, that would be perfect. But
When I talked to him, because I saw him yesterday, he was upset. There's like one of those things where not necessarily
you could tell it was getting to him.
Well, I wasn't like a goddamn it, he didn't sell out. It was one of those ones where you could just see him kind of staring off. Like we'd start talking about the movie and you could just see him stare off and just go, and you could tell it's like, how do I get out of what I'm doing on Monday?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of turn and shake his head and just go back and smile. And I was just like, right when he was leaving, he just kind of said, sorry, man, I wish I really wanted to be on this one. It was just a very sentimental fuck.
Yeah, I get that 100%. He's got a bad case of the FOMO.
Yeah, I'll bring him in. I'll attach some of his ideas and theories into what we talk about.
Sam, you're here in spirit, much like Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, well,
except you're actually alive.
You are alive. Yeah, your spirit still has ears.
Your spirit still has a physical form.
Yeah. So no, he's got a guy that he's worked with. One of the guys that coaches at Ferris is taking another job somewhere, but the guy came on as a student at Ferris, and Sam took him under his wings, and eventually got to be the point where he's at now. And
nice,
he's gotten to a point where it's not shit or get off the pot, but he's got to make some changes. So he got another coaching job somewhere. I want to say that they're down south. Bowie State, and Sam's doing like a hosting of they're kind of doing like a farewell party. So
yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was that's what I'm saying. It's one of the ones where you can't get out of that.
Yeah, and it's understandable why you wouldn't want to either.
Exactly. I mean, as much fun as this is, there's more attached to being with that guy and saying, and they're good friends and all that. So Sam and his wife are friends with it. It'll be a fun time for him, and Sam can now listen to this, and hopefully I get some of what he told me down.
Yeah, he'll let you know for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that same sentiment, you don't get to see some of your friends very often, so should definitely spend time with them, kind of see them off, wish them luck. But Sam is more than welcome to join us at any point. Like literally no issue with that. Yeah, he's more than welcome to join us whenever he wants. So there
you go, Sam. You heard it. Mm-hmm. Well, the nice thing is he's got short windows. If he came on, it's how the episodes are meaty.
Yes, they are beefy,
man,
for sure.
I'll tell you what, there's no filler space.
No, not at all. We are not like an anime that has over 1,000 episodes. Ain't no filler here. At least not when Sam's on. He's definitely a good guest to have on. So hopefully in the future. But speaking of future, future is an element that's often found in sci-fi movies, and I don't know if I'd call this a sci-fi or just a body horror or straight up nightmare fuel, but we're going to talk about the island of Dr. Moreau.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want me to get this one?
If you want to, yeah, and then I can get the documentary.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. Normally I don't like to be selfish, but
I'll let you be.
Thanks. Well, it was
my recommendation. Is it being selfish if I let you be selfish?
I don't know. Now I feel like now you're acting like Dr. Moreau.
Are we getting? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is it selfishness if I let you be selfish?
That's my impersonation of Val Kilmer doing an impersonation of Marlon
That was pretty
Brando.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, hey, we got The Island of Dr. Moreau. All right. It was created in 1996, directed by Richard Stanley for, I never got the total days. Somewhere it says 4 days. Somewhere it says 1 month. Either way, very short-lived on his passion project. Mm-hmm. And then the other director is John Frankenheimer, starring David Thewlis.
David
Thewlis as Douglas, Marlon Brando as Dr. Moreau, Val Kilmer as Montgomery. Ooh, Mrs. Bulk as Aisa.
Faruja Bulk
as Aisa. And then a whole bunch of the two other ones that I'll mention, Nelson De La Rosa as Majai, and Ron Perlman as the Sayer of the Law.
Ron Perlman was very apparent on which character he was when he first popped up.
I'm not gonna lie. I even texted Sam and I thought I called it out. I thought he was the hyena, and then he had kind of a Perlman vibe to him with the eyes.
I was gonna say he kind of looked like him a little bit, but then I heard the lawman's voice and I was like, okay, that's Ron Perlman, because I hear his voice not like super often, but he narrates parts of Fallout. And I play Fallout quite a bit, so it's like, okay, I know which one this dude is.
There you go. You got it. I missed it. I looked at it and I went straight to the hyena, kind of and then they had the wrong name.
There was a moment where I was like, kind of, which one is he again? Am I sure that he's this character? But then he kept talking. I was like, okay, it's definitely him.
Didn't even know. David Thewlis, that name, I know who he is. I've seen him before. I had no idea the name. As soon as he popped on screen, I was like, oh, yeah, it's the professor from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's
this dude. It's Werewolf Boy.
Yeah. And so, and then Perlman popped up, I'm like, oh, sweet. And, so the movie is about David Thewlis gets kind of stranded. The movie starts out essentially in a raft with two other gentlemen that go to battle to survive, get knocked out of the raft, eaten by sharks, and Thewlis gets picked up by a boat and it's kind of just drifting in and out of consciousness, and we're with him, so we're learning as we go along in these bits and pieces of information that he's going to go to an island and that he's going to be taken care for, and he's not allowed to really branch out or discover what's on the island. Eventually, when it gets to night, they lock him in the room. They say it's for his own protection. They kind of keep him there as a prisoner of war of such. Well, not really. I thought that, but they didn't go that route. They only did it one night. Mm-hmm. He ends up escaping. Don't know how. And figures out that the island is inhabited by creatures that Dr. Moreau has been working on for 17 years in hopes of creating a new society or understanding the elements of man.
Yeah, kind of like he wants to make the perfect being. Take the best elements of humans and combine them with the best elements of animals.
Yes. So physically we get that, and then the higher thinking we get with the humans. You'd think, not after watching this thing.
No.
But yeah. So it takes off from there. So I'll threw this on with Preston.
So how did Preston feel about this? Because I feel like there are parts of this movie where if I was his age,
we didn't watch the whole thing.
Okay.
There was so it's really kind of funny because I'm texting Sam and okay, so I throw it on. I looked on IMDb and it said PG-13, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then it says no nudity. I was like, all right, good. Violence, very minimal.
Technically no nudity.
Yeah, because I guess bestiality isn't like nudity. So, none of that. There's minimal violence. I'd only known it from kind of Guardians of the Galaxy, so I didn't know what I was getting into. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking all right, we're going to get this guy who's going to end up saving the island, at some point. So I throw it on. All of it's going on. Preston sees the sharks at the beginning. He goes, oh, look at the sharks. Oh, they're going to get that guy or those guys. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, man, all right. And so we're just kind of watching it. And mind you, it's like 10:30 at night, so I'm kind of thinking he's going to fall asleep.
Uh-huh.
Well, we get to the part where Thulis gets captured, which I was just, not even captured, just put in the thing, doors shut and locked. No, I'm like, all right, he's in here. We're going to, obviously there's animal people that are going to be running around. And I thought the first night nothing would happen. He escapes. Someone gives him a picture of something, which has something like attached to it. It's the most,
It's like something that helps him pick the lock.
Yeah. It was like they just slipped it under the door. So I don't know if it was Aisa or someone that did it. They don't really say. It just helped him out for no reason whatsoever. He escapes. And I'm like, all right. And then so I'm kind of like getting nervous because I was like, God knows, or I should say only Dr. Moreau knows where this is going to go. You know? And Preston's still watching and they open up the, God, I hope his mom isn't listening. They open up the thing, and there's the pregnancy going on. Doctors strewn about, dog people, like full on, like jarring. And I'm
like 6 nipples and like everything, the whole 9 yards.
Just weird. You know, the baby comes out, and I'm like, if that's not a pagan baby, I don't know what is. You know, like this is it's supposed to be jarring, and I think that came from Richard Stanley's brain, that whole scene. So, anyways, it's kind of going on. Thulis is like, you know, and so he's doing the whole like, where the am I at? You know, he's running around. And Preston just kind of looks up at me and goes, hey, Dad, this movie's kind of weird. And I just looked at him and I was like, yeah, buddy, it is kind of weird. And so I paused it, stopped watching it, started texting Sam. Sam's already, he's like 40 minutes ahead of me, you know, and so I text him, I go, yeah, and I tell him about that whole encounter, and I was like, I think, I didn't say I was going to stop watching, I said it was on, and he goes, take his eyes off the screen immediately. And I was like, he goes, there's an animal orgy about it, you know, another 40 minutes into the thing, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know what I was getting into. We stopped watching it, threw on Spider-Man. You know, he passed out in 15 minutes. I was like, well, I got to get back into this thing. So that was it. That was kind of like, what are we doing here?
That's like a bucket of cold water just being dumped on your head while you're watching the movie, especially with your son, your young son.
Never been more disappointed in IMDb. For as much shit with the MPAA stuff that I've seen, and then parents that like, there's mild smoking in this thing. For someone not to be like, hey, there's a pig lady with 8 tits hanging out and an animal birth, like, someone heads up, please.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about like, you know, hey, they opened up a pack of Camelo, you know, or fucking Marlboro cigarettes in this one scene. It's 15 minutes and 38 seconds in. If you don't want your kids to smoke, make sure they don't ever watch this film. But no, the fucking animal birth with the tits hanging off the pig and all the animal doctors is fine.
And like the blood everywhere.
Everywhere. They got chainsaws at one point. I don't know.
The way like the sound design and the way the scene is presented with the music is just so fucking jarring too.
It was the most so like I've seen some jarring things. I was like, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was kind of like it was like,
us, no, but I'm thinking like in terms of Preston's perspective.
He wasn't even, dude. He was just kind of like looking at, like he was half in and out of it. So he's just staring at this. He's like, I don't know what's going on, but you know, it just doesn't look right. And it wasn't like he didn't freak out or anything. He literally just looked over at me and was like, this is kind of weird. Yeah. I was like, yeah, it is. Like, we'll hold off.
We'll wait till you're older for this one, maybe, if you ever show interest.
I'll tell him. I'll let him know. We'll joke and laugh about it, and then I'll just be like, yeah, go watch it when you're 18, you know, and you can make thoughts of your own on it. So anyways,
yeah.
That was I really wanted to look and be like, you're supposed to be sleeping right now. I was kind of hoping. Well, so the movie starts out and I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, this is kind of like what my dad did with me. You know, me and my brother. Like he'd put on some weird movies that we'd watched before, and like me and Sam would end up passing out just because it gets too late, and it's just kind of like, oh, I don't really want them to watch it, but there's no harm in it. So like, I'll just put it on later at night. They'll pass out. I get to watch the whole movie. Like The Thing, we watched that with him one night, and me and Sam stayed up the whole time because it caught us. But like, imagine watching that, and then, you know, 20 minutes into, you see the first dog thing pop out with those things going off. You know, like that was us at like 11 o'clock at night. It's just like, oh, Dad, this is odd. Like,
well, this is peculiar.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
I was laughing so I texted Sam that, and Sam said, no, that's not it. He's like, take his eyes off the screen. I was like, well, I'm gonna listen to him.
Yeah.
You know, he's
maybe for the best. Yeah. He knows what's coming.
Yeah. The pregnancy thing could have been done 40 minutes into it. Like maybe. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thoughts?
Oh, well, I feel like the very first scene of this movie kind of gave me a good indication of the quality of it, because I watched it and it was the two people fighting on the raft, and David Thewlis is kind of narrating the beginning of it, and then he has another instance of narration towards the middle of the movie, and then I don't think you really get another one until like the very end, maybe.
He does at the beginning of maybe each act. He opens it up with narration.
Yeah, which I periodically forget that he did that, so it was very jarring every time he did. And then the scene happens with the two fighting on the raft, and they fall into the water, and there's a shot of a shark, and it's like, this shark doesn't even look like it could eat one person, let alone two people fighting in the water. Like, it barely has any teeth. It doesn't even look, it's like not a great white or anything.
No, it was like stock footage that you just kind of happened to catch of a shark.
Yeah, it was very, very clearly like just random stock footage that someone else had shot of a shark.
Yeah.
And then it cuts away and you just see David Thewlis's face, and I just think to myself, okay, this is the kind of movie that we're dealing with right here.
It does give you so I was in the same boat. I watched this
literally.
Yeah. How about that? He's doing the narration and he's talking about the two guys, and then they go, and this is all within 2 minutes of the opening. And I just laughed. I was like, if this movie had started with him just saying there were three of us and then gave us the shark ditty, would have been fine.
Yeah.
Like literally didn't need. I'm just thinking in my head as soon as it started, I was like, that's $30,000 that they just wasted.
Yeah, it was one of those details where they didn't absolutely need to show you everything. It's one of those like weird instances where like tell don't show would have been preferable.
You have the narration going on. You could do a whole, expo right there onto how they got to the raft.
Yeah, or like just let our imaginations run wild. Have like some blood on the raft, and like show that for a second, and then show David Thewlis like relatively unharmed, and like tell us that he used to have like two people that he was surviving with, and then like kind of leave it there. Like you don't need to show all that stuff in order for it to be creepy.
Did mention it's a little bit of a hint to where we're going at with humanity and figuring morality and all this shit.
Yeah.
Like so
they had to throw the animal scene in there.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I think they could have just did it without it and just said like. They could have, if you would have described that whole act that we watched to you, would you have been less involved or more involved or at the same rate involved?
It probably would have been. It would have been more effective.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I was thinking same, like at least on the same level. If you're telling me same level, like take it out.
Because then, like later in the movie, when you learn that obviously, like the movie's supposed to be a commentary about like humans are really just animals and how they treat each other, it would have been a lot more effective that way. Because then you wouldn't have had the shark in there, and it wouldn't have been like distractingly stupid.
Yes, it was bad. I mean, it was, and the guys like, there's no lines muttered like, "Hey, get your fucking hands off my water!" Like, suck it, Like they just kind of like. Someone pushes and someone pushed back, and then they tussled and fell into the water. And like as soon as that happened, I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I was like, yeah, "They're gonna get." Even Preston knew, he's 6, that they were gonna get eaten.
Yeah, it's super predictable in that way.
Yeah, and they had no one unless someone got socked in the face. There was really no, like the blood just popped out of nowhere. I was like, "Where'd that guy get cut?"
Yeah, like did they just stab each other with combat knives, like just randomly? Did they just pull them out of their ass?
So and I was with Sam on this because I didn't connect the dots, but Sam also said a red flag for him was, as opening shot, it's not Kilmer or Brando in that raft. So,
and that's what confused me too.
Yes.
Like I couldn't put it into words, but that did cross my mind of like this movie, the two leading characters in it that are the top billed are Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer.
Yep.
And I love David Thewlis. Like he's great in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. He's really good as his character in Harry Potter. Like, but he's not like the guy. But he's like the main character of the movie, really.
Yeah,
like you follow him throughout almost the entire thing, and Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando are like the bad guys.
Yep. And so I think we'll try to hold off on the production and all that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely want to save that for later.
Yeah, so we'll save that for later. We'll try to just talk as most glowingly we can about the movie as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was another. Sam did make an interesting point. He thought it was miscast, and he thought that Kilmer would have been better in part as Thulis and Thulis as Kilmer. And I happen to agree because I was like, Thulis kind of has a creepy vibe around him.
Yeah, and I would have believed him because like they were saying that Val Kilmer's character was supposed to be like what, a neurosurgeon or something. Like he was supposed to have a background in science.
Yes.
And David Thewlis, looking at him versus looking at Val Kilmer, just physically, they look like.
Wow, that's not stereotyping in any way.
No. Yeah, no. For some reason, Val Kilmer doesn't strike me as the scientist type.
The arm sleeve didn't do it for you, and the 3 sets of sunglasses he had on his body
and his
all
fucking
times.
frat boy haircut that he had on.
Dude, he dialed it up to an 11 for this film.
Yeah. Kind of a side thing. I like how for the Ghost in the Darkness, I like how to make him look like kind of a nerd, they just slapped glasses on him and called it good.
Yep.
And then this one, they don't even try. They don't even try to make him look like he has a background in science or like an interest in like neurosurgery or like biology in any way.
I called him Renfield, and I didn't know he was supposed to be like, Einstein. Yep. I thought he was like, I was like, oh, he must have got onto this island by mistake, and he's just doing everything. And then you find out, nope, Moreau was leaning on him because he did all the experimentation.
Yeah,
and it was wild.
Yeah, no, David Thewlis would have fit that part much better. Like if they wanted someone who was like a muscle-bound henchman, then yeah, I could see Val Kilmer playing that.
Right.
But he was supposed to have a lot more complexity to his character.
A lot more.
And then, like, just by looking at him, you don't get that. You don't get the sense that Val Kilmer is believable as that character. And it doesn't help that he's not even trying this whole movie.
Only time his character was believable is when they're doing the thing, when the hyena, which... So
when he's like giving all the animals the shots,
I have problems with this film.
Lay them out.
Yeah, boy, understatement of the year, Mac. The guy, they do the trial. Okay,
oh, yeah.
Which is like, I think they're trying to like. I'm not gonna get into themes about this film.
They're like setting
we're
an
just
example.
gonna talk. If it pops up, it pops up. They're doing the fucking trial, trying to do whatever with it. It's all bizarre and shit. The guy dies. The hyena sneaks off. So you watch the scene. Literally, the cremation thing is in the herd of everyone. It's not like. Literally, if someone turned their fucking head, they would have been like, hey, what's that guy doing with that dead body?
Oh, he's shoving him into a furnace, huh?
They do fucking
That's wacky.
over the shoulder, I think, shot, and it shows him just kind of sitting in front of it, and then everyone else, while people are talking, it's just like, he's doing whatever. The issue I have is he takes the chip out of the one thing. Mm-hmm. It looked like he took it and put it in himself.
That's what I thought he did.
Okay.
I'm
now
right there with you.
Assuming that he took it out of himself, realizing that there's chips in them. Mm. Like, that's what I'm guessing. And even at that point, so like I watched that and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. If he knows it's in him, why doesn't he just pull it out?
Exactly, and that's totally like where the movie just goes wrong in terms of like the editing and framing of it. Because I thought that he put the chip inside of himself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. Because like now I'm just saying it out loud. I was like, no, I guess maybe I misconstrued it.
No, you didn't misconstrue anything. I literally thought the same exact thing.
Okay, good.
I was like, why is this guy like shoving it back into him? And then like later in the movie when they try to shock him and it doesn't work, it's like, I guess he pulled it out of himself.
Yeah,
but that's not what I got from the scene at all.
He holds it up in his hand, right? And it doesn't show him crumble it or do anything. He's just holding it, and then he like looks down at him, and then you just see his hand go in there. And then he pulls one out, and I like in my head I was like, it doesn't look like he did a 1-for-1. It looks like he pulled that thing out. I was like, but he had it in his hand, so he must have swapped them. And then I was like, why the fuck would you swap them if you could just pull it out?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so the way they framed it is weird, too, because, like, you just see him, like, immediately with it against his body, and he's, like, screaming in agony like he's pushing something into himself, not necessarily, like, ripping it out, which I guess, I don't know. I felt like maybe I missed something, too.
No, you're good. You're good. We don't need to... It was one of those things where it just...
This movie's gaslighting us, dude.
So I saw that. So anyway, so the next scene is like when he's trying to get the hyena and he's explaining it. Douglas, that's David Thewlis, because I don't want to say his name wrong. He's talking to Douglas and he's trying to get the hyena over there, and then he pretty much just looks over and goes, "Yeah, no, it's just a bunch of methamphetamine, LSD, and freaking your household drugs."
Yeah, shrooms, like every other drug under the sun that he could combine in there.
That's when I went into.
He just wanted to get them to be addicted to something.
The control, like like some sort of controlling stimulus or variable, to help to tame them.
Yeah, keep them in control.
Yeah. And so when Kilmer does that, I was like, oh, this is Kilmer. He's just a drug dealer. Like, that's his character.
Yeah.
Never, even when Moreau or someone was explaining what Montgomery does, I'd never put it into my head like, oh, he's supposed to be a genius. I literally just like, oh, he's a drug dealer on the island.
No. And, like, obviously, like, with the documentary and stuff that we're going to talk about later, you learn a lot about, like, how Val Kilmer was and, like, how they kind of had to fit that character for him, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seemed like it didn't fit at all. It didn't fit at all with what like they wanted for the script versus what the actor was doing.
Yep.
Or what they had his character doing. He was basically just a muscle head.
Yeah, like I called him Renfield. Like I literally felt like I was like, oh, like that's what Dracula's assistant does. He drugs up the corpses, bring them back, gets them under his spell, and then Dracula goes and sucks their blood. It's like he's literally nothing more than your common like a slave.
Yeah,
and then that's what I'm saying. Then you find out he's like supposed to be like. Montgomery created all of the experiments. He's the one that's been here for 17 years. This is all like his creations with my, kind of whatever. Like, because then I think Moreau's explaining what Montgomery does, and then they do this thing where Kilmer is then at a microscope. And what kills me is he's at the microscope. He's got his sleeve on. He's got a set of sunglasses hanging down. He's got the ones on his head. And then he does that thing where he looks into it and he starts twisting it. And I was like, this isn't believable at all.
No.
I was like...
It's as believable as Mark Wahlberg as a science teacher in The Happening. Like, it's that same exact level. Like, I can't take it seriously.
It's very hard to. I was kind of thinking, I was like, oh, he's just stoned out. Like, it'd be like Piccoli from Fast Time at Ridgemont High getting over a microscope and explaining to the teacher like what he's seeing.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, you know who Piccoli is?
Yeah, Sean Penn.
Yeah. Like if he was explaining something verbatim out of a textbook, I wouldn't know if he'd be like, oh, he's high as shit making all of this up. Or if that teacher nodding is like, this man is a fucking like genius. Yeah. Like that was the same thing with Kilmer. Like I had no idea what he was doing behind it, And I'm like, I don't know what we're supposed to. It was wild.
And then we'll talk about it more once we get into the doc. But
the doc's probably heavier than the movie.
I did for sure. But I also want to talk about Marlon Brando because when he first popped out, I was like, that's Marlon Brando. And a lot of the cast and crew had the same reaction when he came out in that outfit, obviously. But I was in disbelief at just how goofy as shit it was, and the way he talked, and like just everything about him. It was baffling to me.
That's why I wanted to have that doc on there, because it's always nice to learn more about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he first popped on, he started talking. Set down the gun. Well, how's he do it?
He's like, put down the gun. Put down the gun.
He goes, hand him the gun.
Hand him the gun.
What?
I hate the sun. Yeah. It's too hot out. Don't you think it's too hot out?
So weird. And, they're taking like you'd think creative liberties.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like you can't necessarily talk about it without getting into the documentary and like what we learn about his character and like what he did with it. But yeah, it's just a weird kind of dichotomy between the whole jungle kind of feral aspect of the movie versus like him being like this almost mad scientist figure, but he's also presenting it as like this almost like cult leader in a sense that's like super eccentric and has all these different like idiosyncrasies going on.
I thought he was an idealist. Like I got a little bit more of, I guess maybe most cult leaders could be construed as that. So, Yeah, I don't know. What's really funny is like halfway through this film, I was like, I don't know what David Thewlis, like, I don't know if. Me and Sam were texting, and I said, I'm going to view him as an anti-hero. And Sam's like, I tried to do that. He's like, wait till you get 45 minutes into this thing. He's like, it will go out the door.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll find out. So the whole time I'm thinking like, oh, like what if Moreau's right? Even though he's a sociopath or whatever. Maybe not a sociopath, but whatever.
Yeah, like a megalomaniac.
Yeah, problems that he has, that he's like, doing all these experiments. But let's say he's right, and let's say that he actually is creating a society for these people, and that what is being governed and given, taking out the drugs, is fair and just, and he's created a whole nother. I mean, you could, culture, right? Mm-hmm. And Thewlis is coming in here, and he's the one that's about to destroy all this because humanity can't accept what Moreau's created, right?
Except it's weird because he has like no bearing on what happens in the movie really much at all.
Well, you don't know that 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
So that's where I was at. And that's why I got to 45, and I go, can't do that anymore.
No. No.
He's just another subject like everyone else in this thing. Like
he just happens to be there. Like his presence in the movie and in the plot is like totally kind of like,
it's for us. It's literally so we the viewer
we're supposed to project ourselves into him.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's like that's the only reason he's there is like,
yeah.
The director was like, well, we need to get someone here, and we can't film it from Montgomery, so like, let's just grab an observer and throw him into this giant ant colony
because he's completely ancillary to everything else that happens in the movie. Because whether or not he would have been there, Hyena would have dug that chip out regardless. Like the leopard guy, Mei Ling or whatever his name was, would have killed that rabbit anyway.
Yes.
They would have killed him. He would have dug the chip out and like stuck it into, or like ripped his chip out or whatever of his body. And then they would have rebelled regardless if David Thewlis was there or not. So then you've got like this weird kind of opposing... I shouldn't say opposing, but like they're totally like kind of different ways that you should view the movie. One way you should view it is like, oh, it's the animals uprising against the megalomaniac leader and kind of rebelling against society in a way.
Yes.
And then the other one is supposed to be, you're supposed to view David Thewlis as like this character where like not really a self-insert, but like you're kind of supposed to view it from his eyes and like his place in it.
Yes.
Where like, oh, he was going to get experimented on and like his fate would have been sealed anyway. But like those two things, like they don't really go near each other all that much. It just so happens that David Thewlis later in the movie just like kind of causes the animals to like rebel against Hyena in a way.
That's it.
Sort of.
Well,
by like talking to him in a certain way, like using his dialogue, but like then that just kind of like that just happens because the script says it happens. Like it's not really any action that the character does or like any sort of like forward thinking. It's just like in the moment.
I was thinking maybe more so like given, a person has logic versus an animal. So they didn't really have the ability to reason at the time of what Thewlis was saying. That's about it. That's all. I mean, I really have no idea. You know.
I don't know. I just found it weird that like there were these two tangential storylines that were kind of going on that really didn't have much else to do with each other.
The other weird thing is like Thewlis isn't. Yeah, he may have been. There wasn't ever really any moments where you thought he was going to get experimented on until he looks up and finds out, oh, they were going to do this, or maybe they still will. Because he has a different, because he's from the UN and he's got a different sort of set of learning, right?
Yeah.
But did you ever kind of, all right, so outside of him, after he escapes that cell, right?
Yeah.
After that point, up into when he finds out they were going to do the surgeries on him, did you ever think he's going to get experimented on?
No, they give you no indication of that.
That's what
anything, any kind of sign that he would have been in danger. Like they kind of just let him hang around and do whatever.
Yeah.
Like they still have him like keep a gun on him and stuff for like, because Marlon Brando's like, oh, you can keep the gun on you for safety if you want, but it's like it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Like because like they don't pose any like immediate danger to David Thewlis, so he's like, well, unless I can like get off this island via communications, I'm basically fucking stuck here.
Yes.
Like I have no other choice but to be here.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. Purely his character is just to, like, be that guy for us to, like, guide us through the movie.
Yeah, because I was like, yeah, all right, we're on a hero's journey. Where are we gonna go? What's his? And I was like, there's no growth. There's nothing.
No.
Literally, it's just like a purveyor for sorts of us.
Yeah.
Just so we could see, pig people having babies and animals being created, or hybrids.
I would have been like fine with that being the case if it was consistent through the movie. Like, let him kind of discover things about what's going on with the people, or like the animal people of the island, and then like have his involvement with the story be a little more profound than just like, oh, I just happened to be here.
It's not, I don't want to say they tried, but they do have, like, so here's the issue that I see. One, Brando's introduced way too early.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you kind of get Brando comes in and he's already mixing, because he's already stopping the action, right? And he's pretty much saying, I control everything. So he's taken over ownership of the island. Before that, Thulis goes out with Aisa, and they're on the run because he's escaped, if I remember correctly. And then they go out and find the people, and he's called the Five-Handed Man because he's not an animal yet. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is where we discover the island. If they would have continued with that, they don't. They bring it back to Brando. Brando, instead of being like, we're going to now put you back in a cell, which they easily could have did.
They easily could have
escaped again, found more people to help him with this. Right?
Yeah.
And then he could have led the revolt against Moreau.
Yeah.
Right? No. Brando says, you're cool, hang out with me.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we're just with Thulis, who is like not Renfield, and he's also not like any sort of fear of something happening to him. Like, it was just like
completely takes the tension away from like anything that would have happened, because you don't get the sense that his character, or like any character that you attach yourself to, is in any sort of danger.
Never.
Until like shit just like randomly starts happening,
Yeah, like when Hyena doesn't show, like as soon as like he doesn't take the drugs, I was like, oh, he's not gonna get shocked. Like then it's on.
Yeah.
But
that's just kind of like where the conflict arises, because the script said it needed to happen that way.
Yeah, and
it didn't feel organic. It didn't feel like it was earned. It just like, oh, you just happen to be here with David Thewlis when this shit kicks off.
And so Thewlis is doing it, right? And they don't even get him on board. It's just Hyena leading his own thing, with Thewlis kind of just watching everything happening. He eventually gets to a point where he discovers he was going to get operated on, but Moreau's dead, so he kind of like doesn't trust Montgomery. Montgomery's don't know why he all of a sudden just went fucking rogue. Like never was it like, I hated Moreau, he's kept me enslaved, like, and then just showing him doing lines of drugs, like nothing. He just is imitating him. Thulis catches him, calls him like a con artist or something, storms out, and then the next thing, Val Kilmer's going down into this elevator shaft, throwing fucking LSD at everyone. And like, I just want like, what just happened? So like, is it maybe the notion that, God or the higher power has been stripped, so like this is naturally where anyone would go to?
I think that's kind of what they attempted to do, especially with Val Kilmer's character, with Montgomery, with how they tried to present it, because like in my mind, I don't want to say it made sense, but I can see where they were maybe trying to go with it. Where I
agree. I'm not saying that I can't see it.
Yeah.
It's like,
like, oh, my master's dead, so I don't have any purpose or any sort of like to do with the world anymore, so I might as well just say fuck it and like just move on. But I'm just gonna do it in like this like reckless way.
What dialogue
it doesn't
happen though for us to be like, oh yeah?
It's like, yeah, they literally just like flipped a switch. There's no indication that Montgomery was of that ilk in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Like,
and they don't have any lead up to it at all.
His character was never. Yes, I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
yes.
You're good.
His character was never coming down. There was never like any sort of, and you find out in the documentary why, and we'll talk about it. But nothing, like, dude. But I will say, favorite part of that whole thing, him going down that elevator shaft with that music cranking and the animal like orgy and fucking just going nuts. I was like, man, this is the energy this movie needed the whole time.
Yeah, well, it's funny because during that scene I was thinking to myself, this belongs in an 80s movie.
Oh yeah,
this belongs in a movie that should have come out like 10 years before this actually did.
Yes.
It's so interesting to me how they had like these different sort of feelings throughout the film that just kind of come and go, and then they don't really stay. Like that whole like kind of underground party 80s vibe with the music going on and the drugs being thrown around.
Well,
but then there's like a jungle survival vibe with like David Thewlis and Aisa running through the woods. And then there's like a whole revolt vibe with Yates. It's like there's different sorts of tones going throughout this movie that don't really mesh at all together.
I wouldn't even say mesh. They weren't well deserved.
No, not at all.
That's, I think, what happens a lot is that we're like... It's kind of like when you're standing on some steps and it's like, why don't you take that next step down? And you go, no. And then you just get pushed. And it's like, I wasn't ready for that. And then all of a sudden you keep getting pushed and you're just at the end. And it's like, hey, we're at Disney World. It's like, I'm still not fucking ready to go here.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't take those steps. You just forced me to this point.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no way I'm ready. Like, I wasn't ready for this.
It was reminding me a lot of the live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies that came out in like the late 80s, early 90s.
Ooh.
Yeah. You know which ones I'm talking about?
Yeah. Very. Speaking of going down Nostalgia Avenue.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But like those scenes where Shredder and like the Foot are like gathered together in their underground club, and they've got like all these ne'er-do-well kids partying and smoking, and like the 80s music's going on.
And they got like the lighting from the sewers, so it gets like really damp, and it's very, would you say industrial? I don't even know.
Yeah, kind of punkish.
Like a Mario vibe.
Yeah, I was thinking like live action Mario a little bit.
Very much of that ilk. Well, there was that revolution from the 80s going into the 90s with the computers taking over, you know. So a lot of that was like we're just all machines eventually getting to our point.
Yeah.
So
like the technical aspects of this movie too, like I just did not like the way it was edited at all.
Oh, horribly done.
Horribly done. Yeah, I don't know. There was just like no real point of tension. I do like David Thewlis. Like I think out of all the acting in the movie, I think he did the best job out of anybody. I mean, like I think he did what he could, you know.
Yeah, Fairuza Balk.
It like seemed like that at least they, especially Fairuza Balk, after watching the documentary, cared about the project in some way.
Only Fairuza Balk. I don't think Thewlis would be any.
Yeah. Well, his lack of mention or lack of presence in the documentary spoke volumes to me.
There's one thing on IMDb that he did say. He goes, I would love to talk about this film, but I'd never work in Hollywood again.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so I was like...
completely understandable.
Oh, yeah. Like that. It's the same with like Mario. If there was a production on that, like a movie on that production, that whole thing going on, like...
Yeah,
you know,
Bob
like,
Hoskins would come back from the dead just to talk shit about it.
I was about to say you could definitely get that sort of feel where people would throw out things that they don't really, because they can't act, like they're so mad that they can't even act about not being mad.
No, I maybe like if enough time passes and David Thewlis becomes an old man, I just want to hear him speak candidly about his experience with the movie. I
would love to hear his stories.
Absolutely, because like you don't get that much in the documentary. Like you get a mention of like the actor who was going to play that character.
You get. Yes, it's just because there isn't any like live action like footage on set. So like a lot of the questions and everything that's being talked about is all people recanting stories, and sometimes it's like hard to believe who's telling the truth and who's just trying to tell a story to fucking tell a story.
Yeah, especially in that documentary where the people presented in it are very eccentric and they have a lot of different passions behind them. I will say that.
So yeah, with this one, and Frankenheimer directed Reindeer Games. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Oh, you've mentioned it. Isn't that the Ben Affleck action Christmas movie?
Gary Sinise, yes.
Yeah.
He does really weird close-up face shots where he comes kind of under the chin but gets like 4 inches just so your whole head's taking up the frame.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very distracting sort of way for someone to talk, because like it'd be like if I was looking at you but that camera was like right here, so like you're coming up but your whole head's in the frame, right? This movie does that so many times, and I'm watching this, I'm like, why the fuck is... And I didn't know it was Frankenheimer. I didn't, so I'm like, why is this director? Who does this? The only other time I've seen this is in Reindeer Games. I was like, this is such a shit fucking camera angle. It's dumb. It serves no purpose. It's not even creative. It's just like a new way for someone to talk instead of doing over the shoulders, you know?
Yeah.
But it's disjointed.
Well, especially when a lot of the characters don't even have faces that you can register, really. Because, like, a lot of them are just, like, people in makeup and people in these animal costumes, and, like, their faces don't even make expressions, really. So it's just, like, really disjointed, and the visuals of the camera and where it's pointed at do not complement the costumes in any way.
No,
because he's framing it in a way that, like, a normal movie with people without costumes would be framed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the Oren Frankenheimer does it, and he does it in that. So it's a patented Frankenheimer shot, which
the Frankenheimer, as they call it.
Yeah, and then you find out no one even likes him.
Yeah.
But I digress. So that was a bad. Was there any good points in the movie that?
Other than David Thewlis, there was some practical effect stuff that looked kind of cool. I mean, you know, like some of the explosions and
Kyle's
like the
looking
fire.
around like he just got caught.
Yeah, I know. We're like with my pants down.
Yeah.
I'm saying bad words when talking about good things with this movie. But I was gonna say, like, aside from like some of the good practical stuff, there was that one boat scene where he like tries to sneak back on the boat and escape, and then like the little creatures come out.
Yeah.
Which you never see again.
Nope.
Like, there's no mention of him, no like real like kind of touch back into that.
It's just so
area.
that he doesn't go back on the boat, right? Like,
yeah,
that's all that we're just
like.
We're
They
just
literally needed a reason for him not to go back on the boat, and that was like, it felt like such a haphazard way of presenting that to us, because like they look like such shit special effects.
The special effects in this whole that tiger, the lion, the Leonidas or whatever the hell his name was.
Oh, are you talking about the cheetah guy?
Yeah, that kills the rabbit and then runs away, but they do the CGI.
Like, yeah. And then he runs at Marlon Brando later in the movie.
He does. Yep,
it's another, like the same exact kind of effect.
How about, and then, dude, oh my God. Yeah. Just not knowing what's going on. It's like they're doing the thing. So Thewlis is now with Brando, and like there's no... you're a prisoner or anything like that. It's really just like, come check out my things that I created. Like, this dude's like a nerd that like has an ant colony with different kinds of ants.
Yeah.
And he's like, check all my ants. And it's like, I don't want to be here. It's like, no, but you have to watch. And they call out the thing for eating a rabbit. He doesn't like it. Hyena's got something going on because he wants to rat him out. And I don't know, like, after what happened, it's like, is he ratting him out, or is he just like, dude, don't break under the pressure? No idea what's going on there, because once again, you can't see any sort of eye movements or anything like that. It's literally just this half guy in a suit looking at this other half guy in a suit.
A lot of what you're supposed to read from the actor's face is lost when they're covered in fucking prosthetics the entire time.
Couldn't tell you. I honestly, I'm watching that scene. I was like, I don't know if he is like, oh shit, my buddy's going, or like, dude, give yourself up. I couldn't tell you. That whole there's like some weird tension going on that I don't know what's going on. And then then it attacks him, right? Mm-hmm. And then the best part about all that, the one guy's got a gun. He shoots him. Brando is pissed off that one of them has a gun. He's like, why do you have a gun? You know, not thank you for saving my life, because obviously that thing would have killed Brando. Scolds the slave. The slave's all embarrassed and shocked that he's got a gun now. He's like, what have I done? And it's like the whole time, like, dude, if you don't have any of that stuff, you're dead. Yeah. So, like, maybe instead of, like, doing the whole gun shtick, like, let's protect him a different way, you know?
Well, it's like with this whole movie, even without watching the documentary, you get a good sense of just how messy the production was. Because for a lot of the shots and like what's going on, it's just these people in these animal costumes running around. It doesn't feel like there's any through line or meaning behind anything a lot of the time. And it just feels like a complete mess.
Two theories. One, I'll always say, I think this is starting to pop up more and more. Movies shot and with dealing with a good amount of water suck.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The only one I think that I guess defeats it's Titanic, but that's, I mean, come on, it's
a lot, and a lot of that was like a studio shot. Like they had like a big
location.
Yeah, they weren't like actually in the ocean for most of it.
Right.
You know,
I've never watched one of these things where someone been drenched in water, deal with all of that, like turn out. Like I'd really like to watch the behind the scenes making of Anaconda now, and just see like if they had a great time making that or what. But like those films always go awry. Always. The other one too is topics like this way too big to grasp. I shouldn't say grasp, but put in 90 minutes. Now, maybe I shouldn't say that, because if they actually had a decent... I don't want to shit on Richard Stanley either. He wasn't given his due, and I don't think this should have been intended to be made as big as it was. This is 100% like a sci-fi film. Like a movie that you throw on, television movie, right?
Yeah.
So it got way out of hand. So I'm not going to tackle that one, because it would be doing this thing injustice, and either... Like if you gave, I don't know, whoever, like, do you think Spielberg could make this film?
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like Spielberg would have turned it down before it reached his desk. If he like had to, if someone held a gun to his head, he probably would have made it. I don't think he would have made it in this way at all. He would have approached it in a much different manner.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
It's one of those movies where like the premise itself is just really goofy, and then the themes that they're trying to tackle with it are very like kind of filled with weight and implications. Like, we're touching on humanity and how animalistic it can be, and how like we're not too different from people and like animals in the wild or whatever. But it's like a thin line between the two of them, but at the same time you're presenting it in this way where it's like these half human, half animal, prosthetic looking, like very poorly done sort of thing. And it's like, maybe if this was a better movie, sure, the themes would have resonated with me a little more. But it's like one of those things where like the theme isn't at all like complicated or anything that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise if the movie was good or bad, right? Like, it's one of those things where it just doesn't really matter. To me, what matters is, like, the presentation and how the movie ends up being. And, of course, you know how that ended.
Oh, boy.
Yep. Yeah. Was there anything that we wanted to say about the movie specifically before we get into the doc?
No. This is, specifically about it, I think that everyone needs to watch this thing. Yeah.
It's a learning experience.
It's one of dude... this is easily a film that you could, if people had seen this, you could bring this up anywhere. You could talk about this on a plane for a couple hours.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the combination of the doc with this, there's infinite amount of fodder.
Yeah, there's a lot that we didn't even talk about. Like, we didn't talk about Aissa dying or, like, her death or anything.
Yeah,
just kind of how it's thrown in there. It really doesn't matter.
Ending the whole thing, the hyena going nuts for no reason. Sam, the last thing that I will say on my brother's behalf, he's texting me, and he's like, there's 10 minutes left. I don't know where this thing's going, right? And then he's like, this is fucking wild. And then the next text I get is, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to have to rewatch this thing. And I'm like dying laughing this whole time because I'm watching this and I'm like, me and Sam, for the most part, we can get on the same kind of idea train, but like one goes left, the other goes right. And so it's always fun to talk about those things. But like I get done and I'm like, I feel like I got hit with a baseball bat. And he's like, oh, man, that was fucking awesome. And so he's like 9 out of 10. He goes, nope, scratch it. There's 45 seconds of raw footage of people just beating the shit out of each other at the end of this thing. 10 out of 10. He's like, I'm rewatching this. I need to watch the doc, and then I need to watch this again. He's like, and I think there's just so much corn on the cob.
Yeah.
For you just to sink your and if you don't watch the doc, you can go anywhere you want with your thoughts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can make a reason for anything and why it like went wrong and how it turned out the way it did.
Didn't even listen to Thulis at the very end with his last montage or his last commentary or his narration. And like I'm just watching these people and I was like, did he film this or where did they get this film from? It's literally just people going nuts.
Is this real?
And then they do that we're not too far from them. And I think that's the last line of the film.
It's like, oh, okay. I love a little ham fist in the morning. Yeah. That's one of my favorite things. We can get into ratings. I'm gonna give this one a 3 out of 10.
Wow.
Bada bing.
All right, what's higher, this or Speed 2?
This.
Damn.
At least this is 90 minutes, and it was. It had David Thewlis in it, my man, my boy.
Wow.
Some kind of cool effects, which I mean, I guess you can say about Speed 2 also with like some of the boat crashing scenes. But like, I don't know, man. This one, it at least kept me interested in what was going on.
Oh, it definitely.
I can't say I was bored.
No, it's either between the half animal, half human, the not knowing the plot or trying to just figure out what the fuck's going on. You'll get through 90 minutes like decently.
I have a challenge for people who might be interested in watching this movie. Get about like 30 to 40 minutes into it and try to predict where you think it's going to go.
Yes.
Because you'll be wrong.
Yes. No, that is... Sam said the same thing to me. And like I said, I thought I knew where it was going. No clue.
Yeah.
No clue.
Obviously, you heard our discussion about it, but like maybe kind of try to Men in Black yourself and forget about what we said and go into it and try to predict where it might go.
You could listen to this and like... You could listen to this and go throw that film on. None of this makes sense besides wherever, you know, if we said this is the ending. That hyena thing that we talked about with Thewlis telling him like to read off the lines and him going nuts, that could happen 50 minutes in.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't seen this yet, you have no idea of a timeline whatsoever because we didn't.
No.
And that's the beauty of this film is that you can just throw... I bet you could... If you hadn't seen this thing... I think you could probably throw this on at any point in a house party. Mm-hmm. And people, you could ask someone where that's at in the film, and every answer would probably be like, oh, we're probably 40 minutes in. Like, literally, if you just skipped over, is kind of like after the raft, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's just say after that in the boat, and you're just on the island. As soon as he touches on the island, I bet you could walk up to someone and say, guess how much time's left in this film? And they could see it, and they go... Yeah, probably about 40 minutes. It's insane.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's crazy.
I think I gave this a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Possibly a 6. I don't remember. When we talk about the hyperbole of sorts on the entertainment versus making sense scale, these things like veer off in way different vectors.
Yeah.
This thing is like entertaining. Like I said, I enjoy talking about this and how much I get a laugh from talking about it.
Of course.
And the production isn't bad. I don't think the production with this is bad at all. I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was gonna be like Sharknado in the 90s.
Yeah.
You know, and like I was like, oh, it looks like a movie. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just wow.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, as they say.
As they say. Speaking of boy.
Oh,
Richard Stanley was just a little boy when he had the idea to make a passion project of his called The Island of Dr. Moreau, and that whole story is chronicled in the documentary called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. It's a very long title for a documentary, but you know what? I think it fits.
The cover fits the title.
Yes, it absolutely does. And I really do like the cover of it.
Yes. I thought that cover, every time I see it, I'm like, I couldn't remember what it was called. I kept typing in Lost Souls, so nothing would pop up.
That's the same thing that happened to me. I would type in Lost Souls, and I'm like, does this even exist? Like, can I find this? I hope this is easy to watch. And then, of course... I look it up later. I was like, "Oh, I'm just kind of dumb."
No, it's okay because like we don't need to say that. You know, it's just one of those things. I had the cover image burned into my head, seared. So like until I saw the cover image, I knew I wasn't on the right thing.
Yeah,
because it looks like a Metallica freaking like album.
It
artwork.
does, like the way the font is. It kind of looks like one of those like heavy metal band names that you'd see. It's like, oh, I can barely make heads or tails of what this is supposed to say.
Which is another great thing that goes into the Island of Dr. Moreau because it's not even close to what they were going for in that regard.
Exactly. So I can tackle this one since you got the actual movie itself.
Yeah.
So Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, as so lovingly and quaintly titled, directed by David Gregory, is a documentary about the beginnings and the idea turned into a full production of The Island of Dr. Moreau by director Richard Stanley, who was a up-and-coming film director at the time. He had 2 movies under his belt that were kind of well known within like the sort of art house indie circles of movie making, and so he was charged with making an adaptation of H.G. Wells's Island of Dr. Moreau, which I don't think we mentioned that it was an H.G. Wells novel.
Yeah, I kept wanting to go back, and I thought, screw it, we just won't mention it now. We'll mention the second part.
Yes, exactly.
Did you say it was a passion project? Like, he sought out to do it. He wasn't tasked to do it. He sought out to do it.
Yeah, I think I kind of mixed up the nomenclature there. But, yeah, no, this was something that he'd wanted to do, and he didn't think that he had the funds or, like, the, weight to do it. He kind of fought for it a little bit, and then they finally gave him the go-ahead. And after a while, it kind of chronicles the events that take place of him obtaining different actors for the role. At one point, Bruce Willis was attached to it, James Woods. Marlon Brando was one of the people that was first and foremost attached to the project. Kind of, sort of. And then as production went on, they ran into more and more roadblocks. A lot of it having to do with the conditions of filming. A lot of it having to do with Richard Stanley's relationships with people and the actors, and just the sort of conditions that he was met with while trying to make this film. And eventually it led to him being kicked off of his own movie that he was supposed to direct, and his replacement, John Frankenheimer. They kind of chronicled that also, and the different problems that came with that as well. So yeah, this documentary just kind of touches on the making of the movie, or like the attempt to make this movie, and just the different challenges that everyone on set and the cast and crew faced during the time.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of get into that. It kind of gives you a bit of insight into why the Island of Dr. Moreau ended up the way it was. And kind of just why it just doesn't translate very well. It feels like a big old mess.
Yeah, you get this movie probably could have made more money than the Island of Dr. Moreau if they were comfortable giving out the secrets.
Yeah, if they were like loud and proud about the fact that it ended up like shit.
Yeah. Because I think I feel like more people would have paid to watch this than the actual movie itself.
Yeah. One of the craziest things I learned was that Bruce Willis was supposed to be in this movie as the main character, right? Like he was
Douglas.
Yeah, he was supposed to be David Thewlis's character.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and then Bruce Willis had to drop out because he was being divorced at the time from Demi Moore, and that ended up having them to cast what was his name? Robert something?
Moreau?
Yeah, Robert Moreau. And he was supposed to be
Douglas.
Yeah, he was supposed to be Douglas. Well, at first Val Kilmer was too.
Val Kilmer signed up to be so they had Bruce Willis, James Wood, Marlon Brando.
Yes.
Willis fell out. They got Kilmer, right? And then they got James Wood to play Montgomery, which James Wood probably would have been a decent Montgomery.
He would have been better than what we got.
Well, so Kilmer accepts it. Well, Kilmer wanted 40% less shooting and like availability to rewrite his scripts and more money.
Yeah.
And so they signed him not knowing that they kind of agreed to that, or Richard Stanley at least didn't. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden they had to figure out, well, instead of shrinking the script, we'll just flip characters.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. Then they had to go back out and find another Douglas. And they don't even. What's funny is Thewlis is literally not attached to any of this because they don't talk about getting him. They don't have his name brought up once.
No, not at all. That was one of the things that I was kind of hoping that the documentary would touch on at least a little bit. Yes. Is like when and how David Thewlis came into this project.
Not once.
That was like the most interesting thing to me.
Once do they ever? Because at that point, me and Sam were talking about it, and Sam, I was like, I just can't believe Kilmer was a douche. He goes, dude, he was at the height of his power. And I was like, no, he wasn't. And Sam's like, yeah, dude, he goes, 96. He goes, him and Tom Cruise probably couldn't be separated. And I was like, fuck. I go, my ass, like, yeah, they can. So Sam starts going through and naming it. And, you had, so they had Batman Forever, which was leading the box office over the planet. Mm-hmm. That's why they got Kilmer, because they needed the name. And he did something right before that was incredibly successful that I'm drawing a blank on.
When did Heat come out?
That was it.
Okay.
Heat. So he had Heat, in which he worked with Michael Mann, and then he has Batman Forever, which I don't know exactly who directed that one, but I mean, those two huge
Was that
hits.
Schumacher?
No, I think he did the fourth one.
Okay.
Yeah, because he had the nipples on Batman. And
that's right.
He had a whole nother statement.
Yeah, there was a different sort of commentary being made with that one.
He might have did 3 and 4, but so I mean, Kilmer signed on to do it with those implications. And then what I found was really funny is that both guys that they had were both getting divorces in this thing. Willis is getting divorced from Demi, which became public. Mm-hmm. Kilmer doesn't know he's getting a divorce until his wife goes on TV to let him know he's getting a divorce.
Yeah. Well, not only that, he's being sued for divorce. So it's like a whole thing where he had to go to court and all this shit anyway.
And he was already making a movie. He was on the I wanted to say he was on the set of something else, but he wasn't. He just got done with Batman. So
didn't he do The Ghost in the Darkness like right before?
It was right after.
Right after Dr.
Yeah, because
Moreau.
We read that off. That was one of the things where they were concerned because they read that he was a hot case.
Yeah.
And you can kind of actually tell with Michael Douglas talking about him that he's like Kilmer's. That's, I think, why Kilmer's career kind of went into the shitter.
Because he was super difficult to work with and a pain in the ass.
If I had to guess, like everyone talks about Nick Cage and that had like money problems. I'm like, yeah, but I also feel like.
Well, it's weird because this documentary definitely gave me the greatest sense that Val Kilmer was an asshole to work with, and it's not just going off the word of like Richard Stanley or like this one person.
Right.
Like almost everybody that they talk to in this documentary, like every talking head has something negative to say about Val Kilmer, which is super telling.
In the nicest possible way they could say it.
Yeah, right? Knowing that he'd probably watch this and like, know who they are and like kind of risk their careers in a way because he was such a big name at the time.
It was at the time, as I was saying.
Well, I guess, yeah.
That's why I kind of get upset. It's like
this documentary was made in 2014.
Like, come on, guys. Like, let loose.
Yeah, right. Like he's not going around doing much else right now, right? Besides like, a few things here and there, maybe.
Yeah.
But he definitely wasn't nearly as big of a name then as he was like in the 90s. So they could have just like you said, let loose and kind of let him have it a bit. It would have
been a little bit more fun if it felt like whoever like they brought a New Line producer in there who was standing with their arms folded over their hands watching the person talk. Mm-hmm. And it was like would shake their head. It's like, you can't say that because they tiptoed around a bunch of stuff. But
although I do like the one guy who said like, if I was making a biopic about Val Kilmer, I wouldn't have that fucking prick anywhere near it.
Yeah. He goes, even if I made a movie about Val Kilmer's life, I wouldn't have it starring Val fucking Kilmer. Yeah. That's what Frankenheimer said.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so they don't talk about Thulis getting on at all, which was upsetting, and then you find out that the Michael Dakota or something like that, he was one of the producers that got first assigned to helping out with the project and helping kind of steer the budget. Mm-hmm. And I'm fairly certain he's the one that brought up like getting Brando in it,
Okay.
And then you find out that So one, the budget's like $8 million. New Line is kind of had some like good movies come out, but I don't think they were like Miramax or Columbia or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they were still kind of playing in the mud a little bit. And someone goes, "Let's get Brando." They have $8 million. Brando gets his name attached to it because Richard Stanley is like. They already talked about Roman Polanski over like usurping him. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I got to get Brando on board. Fucking cuts his own hamstrings to get Brando aboard, right? The budget goes up like that, and then everyone goes, oh, by the way, we can't just use Brando because he's not a box office get.
Yeah, we need to have like a box office draw that like people can currently see themselves going to see a movie for.
So they just dude, I was dying laughing. I was like, New Line. You talk about it being a mess. New Line was a fucking mess too. All right.
Yeah.
Don't sit here and act like they didn't have it. They let some kid in a candy shop who just went absolutely nuts, and they were going off some of those early success because they showed a little bit of their movies that came out, and like there's like 4 or 5 movies you recognize like good enough to to fill up some profit. You know? And so fucking they go in there and we get Brando, and then so like they look around and they go, well, you know what? We can't just use Brando though. So like we just jacked up our budget $30 million just to pay for him. Oh, by the way, we still need a second lead.
Yeah, like we need another person to attach this movie to.
By the way, needs to be a big name that we fill asses in seats.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of crazy that they picked those two because apparently those two turned out to be like the biggest problematic actors to work with of that time.
Well, and so this documentary, I think, does a really good job. And it's not just a bash on this movie, but it really gives you good insight onto what you're dealing with as a production house. The people you attach to your film, what it actually, directors aren't like they're directors, they're fucking leaders, dude. Like that guy kept using the word vision, Hofschneider. Your vision. Like you hear that, like businesses talk about that. What's your vision of the company? You need to have that long run goal, like not in sight, but know that you're gonna go there through the woods and all that shit. And like directors have to have that. So that's why Stanley getting pulled off that, and he kept talking to Frankenheimer, what's your vision? He goes, fucking vision. My vision is to get this movie made.
Yeah.
Like there's no passion behind it. And
you definitely get that sense when you watch the movie.
That's what and so like it's just funny hearing about like that they get these actors attached to it. The actors don't even give a shit. You need to wrestle their egos. Dude, they get everyone dressed up. They're shooting in like an hour. They get everyone dressed up, and then the guy goes, yeah, so Brando and Kilmer didn't like each other, and Brando tells the AD, the assistant director, I'm not getting out of my trailer till Kilmer gets out of his.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I think that I took away from this documentary is just getting a really good sense of how fucking messy the whole thing was due to people's egos, due to anybody not being able to communicate with each other properly.
Well, yeah.
Like nobody knew what the other person was doing on a technical level. And like you said, just complete wasted time of people getting dressed up in these prosthetics and these costumes and then not even filming for the day.
That was wild.
Like, quite literally wild. Like everything about this movie just was so haphazardly done. And this documentary just proves it.
Yeah. And I felt one of the better things is at the end, the guy goes, if this movie was $8 million and Richard Stanley got to get some people that he liked working with, and he'd love to live in that parallel universe. And so it's funny, you think about independent films, they're independent for a reason. They'll give you the resources, but they stay out. Like they're not gonna thrust Marlon Brando down your throat. Like no. I think that's why probably A24 does such a great job with it. Because
they'll give Ari Aster a nice sized budget to do whatever he wants, and then they'll say like, all right, we're gonna back off. Like, there's no like studio meddling or anything with that sort of thing.
Go get who you want, and we'll pay for them if you can make the pitch that we need Joaquin Phoenix in this film.
Yeah, like the smaller your budget and the smaller your kind of like team and group is with the movie, the more control over it you'll have.
Yes, it's funny, and that's what this movie actually had going at the inception of it.
Yeah,
that's why it's so wild.
Well, that's why they picked Richard Stanley, is because they wanted someone who was like an up and comer. He was like kind of the hot new thing at the time.
He pitched the movie idea to New Line.
Yeah,
like that was his I'm pretty sure or. So I don't want to step over anything. So the way I remember it is Stanley loved H.G. Wells' book because he talked about him and Joseph Conrad, which I think they had a Joseph Conrad joke in the movie, but I don't remember. Anyways, I thought he was calling his agent or someone from New Line to get this pitch the movie idea to have it made, and then he had to go fight to have him be the director of the movie.
Yeah. Well, didn't he have to make like concept images and drawings and like all these different ideas that he had to present in a visual way?
I think so, because they kept showing that stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sense that I got too with it. There's a lot in this documentary that they throw at you that like you kind of have to try to absorb every bit of information. And I had to watch this with subtitles too, because Richard Stanley, the way he talks is so...
Isn't it weird?
It's super quick and like unmoving.
Cormac McCarthy.
It's almost like he talks like a robot, the way that he speaks, just super quick and like with no real inflection in his voice really whatsoever.
There's no pauses, there's no breaks. He's literally, if he's
going to
go on
words,
for 40, if he's going to go on for 4 minutes, he'll literally go 4 minutes and you won't know if he breathed or not.
Yeah. The dude just keeps going and going and going.
I had the same thing. I was like, I don't know what he's saying. Like he's going way too fast. I need to read it.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy to me is, so we talk about directors and how they have like the power and the vision, but then you get a total inverse of that when John Frankenheimer takes over and he literally just goes along with the whim of Marlon Brando and what ideas he has for the character.
Yeah.
And we kind of hinted at this a little bit when we talked about the movie itself and like Marlon Brando's character as a whole and like how he was presented. But Marlon Brando was just there to basically fuck with everybody. Like it just seemed like he wanted to just screw around and say like, this is fucking stupid.
Well,
I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want.
So there are like, he's like a con artist, there's people that they just don't. Well, I'm serious. Like there are guys like Frankenheimer's a con artist too. Like he went in there and he looked at this thing and laughed and was like, you've got Brando and Kilmer. Like in his head, he's probably like, you got Brando and Kilmer on this thing? Like, are you fucking nuts? He goes, we've got a budget of this, and like this needs to get out because they've already committed to the salaries.
Oh yeah.
He walked in there and was like, I'll just get this thing on tape and we'll just call it. He's like, they won't care. If they'll be so embarrassed and like want to bury this thing so fast, my name will never get brought up again. Mm-hmm. Which it probably really doesn't. I mean, I don't think if you ask anyone who directed The Island of Dr. Moreau, like they would go, oh, that's a Frankenheimer film.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's got the Frankenheimer touch and framing and the way he zooms in on the characters' faces is really just a telling that it's a Frankenheimer production.
Yeah, that actually probably... And yeah, that would be the only tell. Because I mean, I caught it right away. Dude, because you never see that shot ever. You never. We were watching this with some friends. We watched Reindeer Games, and they were making fun of the shot. And I thought it was kind of like one of those things they do it a couple times. He does it throughout Reindeer Games.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it really, unless there's like a jilting, like a jarring, like what. And like the camera where the room starts spinning or whatever, like obviously there's something going on with like a realization. Like you do that up close and personal shot of like kind of like, oh my God, like my world's been flipped. Like that's kind of no. Frankenheimer just does it normal conversation.
Yeah,
like just no reason, just so that. But he, like I'm saying, he's a con artist. Because he probably was like, we'll get this thing out. I'm gonna get paid, $10 million, and I get the next 3 films that I want. Yeah, like, I bet you Reindeer Games is a New Line movie. If you looked it up,
let's find out.
Yeah. So you look that up, and then Brando is like, I'm gonna get $40 million to star in this fucking atrocity of a film. He probably talked to Richard Stanley, and what sold him was that Stanley had no backbone and was so green that he could do whatever he want and get paid to do whatever he wants. So that conversation that Richard Stanley did to save Brando and be the director and not Roman Polanski probably ended Richard Stanley and got Marlon Brando paid whatever he wanted to. I mean, you knew the whole time, and do we have an answer?
It doesn't look like it was New Line. It was Dimension Films and distributed by Miramax.
Damn.
Yeah. So, kind of not really along the same line, but
Well, because that could have been a 4th film coming out from. So yeah, so that's why I think. So like you talk about Marlon Brando being on this thing, like I think Brando recognized an opportunity and was like, I get to go to Australia, I can dick around, do whatever I want, get paid $30 million, and not have to worry about this thing getting distributed. Like Because the whole time, like every time they talk about like what he would do and stuff like that, it's like he doesn't care, and you think he doesn't care. Like when he gets on set, it's like, dude, it's Marlon Brando. Like he probably knew the moment that Richard Stanley showed up with that chick that he's like, I'll do whatever I want to do.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm gonna be in control of this thing. Yeah, because a lot of what he does with the whole like white face paint and like the get up he's got makes him look like a weird fucking bloated monk, and like the ice bucket on his head and all this shit. Like a lot of that is just like him deciding that, oh, that's what I want the character to do because that's what I want to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Well, how about he gets? Remember, so he talks to Hofschneider, and this is true too. But so Hofschneider played Malago or something like that. One, the other thing that really pissed me off in this thing is like, why don't we just have normal names? Like, I know you created animal people, but like, you can name them Ted. Like, there's nothing in the rule books that says you have to go out and create your own language of names.
Skippy.
Couldn't tell you. Could you name Aisa? I mean, how many? I don't know one Aisa. Right?
Yeah.
Go look up. So hyena is just hyena. I couldn't give him a name, but the thing that killed him was like named like Lachard. You know, like I can't. Here, hold on. Before I just start sounding like an ass.
Before I start culturally appropriating these animal people.
I'm not. But like, so he walks in there. Well, I feel like people are listening. It's like, oh, okay, that's not gonna be good. Let's go. So. Moreau, Montgomery, all right, you got Aisa.
We got a lot of M names in this movie. I think that's where a lot of the issues lie.
No, I mean, Azazalo, that's a name. There's two Z's. I've never heard of two, like maybe a Z's.
Azazalo.
Right? Is that Majai, Assassimon, Lomai.
Yeah, Lomai. He was the leopard guy.
We're going like transversing here.
Yeah, these are like weird.
Moling, Wagdi, and then they just got really lazy. They go Boar Man, Bison Man, Fox Lady,
Hyena,
Kareel. That's what I'm saying. So you also have all these names, and you can't follow anyone. All right, and then so Ron Perlman's just the sayer of the law. He doesn't even have a name. Like, you have 5 made-up names here, and then you just look at him and go, give him the generic title.
Yeah, give him job title, basically.
Like,
well, yeah, it is weird how like a lot of the characters are given like these almost tribalistic sounding names, and then other characters are literally just Boarman and Hyena.
Yes.
Like, there's no consistency. There's no thing about the other names that kind of make them stand out or memorable. So there's no reason to name them that way. Like, I don't. It is weird. I agree with you.
I agree with, and on the tribal, like I was like trying to think of like something exotic or like, but I'm like, there's really no consistency throughout though, and there's only 5 of them.
Yeah.
So like, why don't you just look around and be like, all right, we've only got 6 speaking lines. Let's do something maybe kind of cool, but kind of rememberable. So, like, if you say Hofschneider's name, you don't have to call him Mai Ling.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if that was him or not.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying is, like, we're not really attaching anyone. Like, you really have a hard time attaching names, which is even funnier because Thulis, his name's Douglas. I can barely remember Douglas.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because, like, his character, I think, was named a couple different things because, like, it was Edward. It was Edward P. something, and then it was Edward Douglas.
In the book, his name's Edward, so that's the protagonist. That's his name in the book.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I thought it was Edward too until, you know, IMDb says Douglas, which they steered me wrong with this whole fucking thing.
I think it's Edward Douglas, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They probably just have one or the other, but then they have Montgomery and they just call him Montgomery.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which you never get his first name.
Yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed this documentary quite a bit as like an insight into why the movie was such a mess. I think I personally would have liked a little more if they included other elements of like just why it went wrong or like different things, because a lot of it is focused on Richard Stanley. I mean, it's in the title of the documentary,
right.
Like Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. But at the same time, I don't know, I would have liked a little more information about just like the post-production or like a lot of the technical aspects and like why they didn't necessarily work, why they had to like fucking include these weird little CGI monsters on the boat, like David Thewlis's inclusion.
Yes.
Obviously, I would have liked a little more insight on that. But I don't know, as a documentary, it was pretty decent in giving me insight as to like just why it went wrong. Like just my biggest takeaway from it.
No, I was curious about it, and I wanted to see. I couldn't at the beginning. I didn't know that there was 2 directors and Richard Stanley got canned.
Yeah,
and then I think everything that you read on doesn't really do it justice for why he gets canned. Mm-hmm. Everything that says after 4 days of shooting he was out, and it was interesting to see that this was a really big passion project for him. And then just to see it kind of stripped away in front of him,
Well, it's also weird, too, because they do present him as, like, this eccentric person. I mean, he presents himself that way.
Oh, yeah.
The way he speaks, the way he talks about, like, how he casts... He had his friend, like, cast a spell and a curse on the movie production or something. Or, like, he wanted to be blessed. And then, like, his friend passed away. And then, like, it undid all the blessings that his friend did. And then... Like later in the documentary, it's revealed that he wasn't that far from set at all, and then he rejoined as an extra, just sneaking on the set as like this dog, which I thought was like one of the most interesting parts about the documentary.
The guys that go, they're like picking up hippies, homeless hippies in the jungle around this area. This movie there's so many points and counterpoints. I could see why no one wanted to be around each other when they talked about it. Mm-hmm. So Frankenheimer comes in, right? Takes over. AD starts talking about the AD for Frankenheimer. I thought was the best part of this whole thing because he's actually got some perspective of everything going on, and he's like, whatever. Like I never got my shot, so I'll just And he goes. So we wake up in the hotel and we go down and we drive over and it's 10 minutes to the road and then it's we're at 30 minutes and 40 minutes. If it takes us an hour to get to set. And he's like, and the whole time we want to be in the jungle. He's like, I'm looking around. I'm in the jungle the whole fucking time. He's like, I don't know why we had to go an hour away. So he's like, so then I'm told that because they want the master shot. They want the master shot around the hill and they're on the mountain. It's the highest peak. And he goes, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, except the goddamn mountain in the shot is out of the shot. You have to film down so you can see up so you can get the mountain in the shot. And then so he gets done talking. I'm like, wow, that's a great point. And then the guy comes on behind him, the Australian guy's like, well, we spent a long time looking for that spot. Like we went out hours and hours and we determined that spot not only because of the vegetation and I'm like sitting there, I was like, holy shit. Like no one can even agree on this thing. Like they picked one area and they said the spot they picked, they go, you got the red on the map, you got the blue. And then you got the darker blue. And then you got the red. And then in the wee little bit of spot, there's the purple. And once you know it, that's where we decided to shoot.
Yeah. Oh, it turns out the heaviest spot for rainfall on this map is exactly where our set is for everything. And we got there. It's like, I think we'll be good for the weather. I think. And then an hour later, all of our equipment's underwater.
Yeah. Hurricane hits.
This is like that segment in the Star Wars documentary, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
But this is like that segment where they are out in the desert. Yeah, they're out in Tatooine in the desert, and they had like this horrible windstorm come through and like knock everything down. But that's just like a small sliver of that documentary.
This is bad. This is so bad.
This is grim. This is grim. This is fine. This is grim.
Everything's fine. This is grim.
Yeah. It's like that, but with this one, it's like the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. They just shot in that one area.
Yeah.
Which is also even funnier, too. Like, think about how this is supposed to be kind of like an adventure film a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're literally just, like, in the island, obviously, so there's parameters. But, like, nope, just one spot. That was it. That's all we got. We picked out. And then the guy laughed. He's like, they planted bananas in the jungle. Like, they built more of the jungle in the jungle.
Well, that's a good point too, is like it doesn't feel like in the movie they use the environment to their advantage really at all. Like they just kind of shoot in the jungle and then like in this clearing where the sets are built and then that's it.
Yeah, like if you think about it, they do the elevator shaft thing. They have the clearing where they hurt everyone. There's only
and
one
then there's the main house. There's only like 3 sets that this movie really has.
Yeah, exactly. And then the only other real shot that you get a vibe of anything is when you see the little main guy out on the river.
Yeah, that's literally it. That's the only time.
I thought once we got there, I was like, oh, we're getting away from the compound. No, they just bring you right back in, and then you get to hang out the whole time.
Well, it's like, oh, where's the sense of exploration or like discovery in this movie?
Yes.
And this documentary just cements the fact that like because this production was just such a chore for the director and like the different producers involved, that they had no sense of discovery. There's like not much creativity going on at all after Richard Stanley leaves it.
Yes, 1,000%. Like that is. You feel kind of bad, but then you see some of like how he was acting and doing it. Have you ever seen Tropic Thunder?
Yes.
This had a very Tropic Thunder. Like I feel like they took Tropic Thunder and was like, we'll make it off like kind of a joking way of this movie.
Yeah.
Take that young up and coming director that can't handle the cast, can't handle this big production, doesn't know what's going on, but instead of like forcing him into exile, we'll just, anyways. Like, that's what I feel with this one. So you hear Richard Stanley doesn't do any of the meetings, doesn't want to talk to anyone. He's so introverted. Mm-hmm. It's like, you just kind of wonder who thought this was all a good idea.
Yeah.
It
does a good job of, like, not totally convincing you that Richard Stanley was 100% in the right with everything. Like, obviously, he's an eccentric person who had his flaws and his quirks and the kind of own personal roadblocks that he himself had. That kind of hindered the movie and like communication with the making of the movie. But it's like at the same time, you do get a good sense of like this was his passion project. This is what he wanted to make, and he didn't get to make it the way he wanted because of like outside circumstances, things beyond his control, or just like lack of communication between different parties. Like,
yes.
It gives you a good rounded view of everything involved with it.
It does, and it also makes me appreciate some of the GOATs even more. The ability for Spielberg, I mean, even James Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
Take on all. Like, I was actually honestly thinking about, what's his name? Ocean's 11.
I don't know.
I can't. I'm just drawing a blank right now.
I'll look up Ocean's 11. Let me see.
Damn, it's not. I can't believe I'm. Oh my god! I can't believe I'm drawing.
Lewis Milestone?
No, not the 57. The 20.
Oh, Doy.
Yeah. Soderbergh. Yeah, because he does those like ensemble cast movies. Mm-hmm. Like, dude, George Clooney, Brad Pitt. You got freaking Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Andy Garcia, Julia Roberts. All right, he couldn't handle Brandau and Kilmer. Clooney, Pitt, Damon, all on the up and up at that point. Mm. And Ocean's, like, it gives me more appreciation for movies like that.
Yeah.
And it also gives a lot bigger insight into what people are dealing with while they're making these things. And then it rings even more true when you talk about how a production house can really fuck it up.
Yeah.
Or I bet the producers got their hands in it. This is a great example of what that means. Mm. He had no intention of Kilmer, Brandau. Like he said, give me $8 million. I'll get you a good film. And next thing, I think I read the budget on this was $60 million.
Yeah.
It was either 40 or 60, and that worldwide, I think it was 40. And worldwide, it made $49 million.
Yep, you're exactly right. $40 million budget, $49.6 million box office.
And they made it seem like they lost money, so God knows how much they lost on it. But it's really fun to think about that, because I wasn't even. A lot of what's going on is just kind of streamlining it for us, and it wasn't really till the very end that guy started talking about like this is what he wanted to do, and if he would have had this and that, I'm like, oh, so that's what this means. Mm-hmm. Real quick, I gotta say too. So, rumor has it that Brandau hated Kilmer so much. Anytime that they had parts together, he would eat cabbage an hour before they went out and did like any of the filming. So when they were on set together, he would just sit there and fart, and it'd really piss off Val Kilmer. Like, that's how petty they were.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they talked about how they wouldn't come out of each other's trailers unless the other person came out of their trailer first, and I was like, Jesus, man. But how do you solve this roadblock?
it kind of is like, Brandon, like, you don't even fucking care. Like, why do you even care if Val Kilmer's being a douche? Like,
Yeah,
you have to be
right.
the bigger douche on set. Like, he's the one. Hofschneider, the best part about this is him, like, Hofschneider meeting him for the first time. And then Marlon Brando going, you're not German enough. And looking at Nelson De La Rosa, the world's shortest man, and going, like, you're actually going to be in the film more. It's like, he looked at Hofschneider, he's like, you're not German enough. And the guy's like, I'm literally German. He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't buy it. And he looks at De La Rosa, he's like, I want you to be my, like, second in command.
Yeah, you're my favorite person in the world from now on.
Yeah. And then, dude, but I will say, pop culture wise, Austin Powers, as far as Shaq made, would not have known that little mini me, you know,
Oh yeah.
piano playing was inspired by that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I thought that might have been Vern Troyer for a second or something.
Yeah.
But
I didn't think that was a real guy.
I thought he was like claymation or like
Yeah.
something. Because at one point, I'm pretty sure in the movie, he's just like super still. Like he's just the body cast.
Yes.
Like he's just standing there, not doing anything. And it's like, this little thing isn't real, but he looks too good not to be real at points. So it's like, okay, they just found this super small guy and put a body cast on him and told him go. Yeah, he freaked me out. I did not like looking at him.
Shake his hand. Shake his hand. All he wants to do is shake your hand. Shake it.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's okay.
And then I feel kind of bad. So I'm like watching this. I was like, oh my God, like this is like this person, like he's not too far off from who he really is.
Yeah.
You know, like Hyena Man doesn't look like that. Like all they did was kind of throw a wig on, like a little bit of makeup on this guy and
Yeah.
you know, a turban. Like that's it. That's the only difference. Like he pretty much looks like that outside of
Yeah, they put him in like a wrinkly looking onesie and said like, all right, you're good to go.
Yeah, like I'm like they didn't shrink down a human being to that size. I was like kind of feeling bad. I was like, oh man, like I wonder if that's his daily interaction. Like, go ahead, he won't bite. He's all right.
Yeah, treat him like a pet. Jesus, yeah, that'd be terrible.
Yeah.
Was there anything else we wanted to talk about with the documentary?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's so much attached to this thing. I mean, like it would have been nicer if they would have had more behind the scenes footage on it.
I agree.
I would have loved to have seen those parties that they were talking about. Like they could have had 15 minutes just talking about some of the stories about shit. One of the best lines in this thing, and not to be like inappropriate or anything, but like one of the guys goes, there were people having sex together that shouldn't have been having sex together. I was like, who are those people?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Because De La Rosa's on this set. That's the only guy I'm thinking of, like, doing something here. Like, you know, that's why I was like, I want to hear, like, I wish they would have had a little bit more. They had the two guys that were out there that were kind of like, obviously stoned and like just got brought on to talk about this. That probably didn't remember much of anything besides picking up. They find Richard Stanley, they pick him up, and then they're like, we just brought him back. And then one of them laughs. He goes, yeah. How about security, right? Like they just let the former director on set. Mind-boggling. I'm just like thinking,
it's
like,
crazy.
Fucking yeah. So no, this I thought this was a great dessert for the entree.
Yeah,
I really did. I enjoyed this thing. Like I've now that I'm talking about it more too. I think I was so excited to talk about this because who else do I talk to? You know,
Right.
like who else are we gonna tell? Like no one gives a shit about this. Like it was wild. It's yeah. So
quite literally wild. Yes, feral, if you will.
I keep saying that. Yeah, but yeah.
What would you rate this documentary?
So the documentary itself, probably a 7 out of 10. I think, you know, if you're going content versus like opinions or like your talking heads versus like the footage, like it's all kind of close. I think Richard Stanley had a pretty big hand in making of this, or whoever made it wanted
it's
to.
Very much from his perspective. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but they don't dive into some of the things they could have dove into. And not to say that they played nice with him, because they do kind of say how he fucked it up himself and wasn't very present on things. But like, it would have been nicer if New Line, because I don't even know if they're still a production house anymore.
I feel like I never see that logo anymore whenever I watch a movie. I think I made the comment while the movie was starting, like, oh shit, I haven't seen that in a while.
And it's so funny because like you sit there and like those movies pop up when they're talking about New Line, and you recognize some of the New Line films, like big nice, like decent sized films.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they just had a hand in production or they threw up some of the cash to get, but anyways, I think that they just it leaves me wanting more, but it would have to be more on the unscaled side.
Yeah.
Like I like you sound like you probably want a little bit more on the technical, the production, a little bit more of like the conversations, maybe like in terms of the movie.
Yeah.
I wanted a little bit more about like, I wanted to hear about, people like smoking weed, doing coke, getting shit ton of per diem money and being like, we lived there for 6 months and balled out.
Yeah.
Like Fire Festival,
Like,
Fire
Festival.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. So yeah, 7 out of 10. What do you got?
I'm the exact same, 7 out of 10.
Wow. So that's a bigger deal. You're 7 out of 10 than my 7 out of 10.
Well, I liked it overall. I think me personally, like you just said, I would have liked a little more insight into like the post-production of it, different sort of cast members' involvement with it, like David Thewlis especially. Oh my God. I would have liked a little more varying perspective on like the whole movie side of it I shouldn't say because I did appreciate Richard Stanley's whole angle with how the documentary was presented and like where he was coming from it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it would have been nice to get a more rounded insight into the movie itself and like how it came to be. And you get a little bit of that, of course. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit. You get a lot of that, but there's some things that I felt missing that I would have liked to have, experienced from a like filmmaking behind the scenes perspective.
Yeah. So. Like if you could take some of how Rogue or the Star Wars documentary went, like if you could take some of that aspects out of it and put it into this one, I think this would have bumped it to like an 8 or a 9.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I love that Star Wars documentary. Like it's super compelling, and I love the way it's presented. And if it was just a little bit more like that, then I think I would have appreciated it a little bit more. But I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Good. I'm glad. So I think those tied in well together.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of absolutely, we got some absolutely banger questions
that
we can answer. Thank you guys for leaving the questions for us. Keep a lookout on our YouTube and Facebook pages for any posts that I make wanting some audience connectivity, some engagement. And our first question comes from Megan, who asks, what would your favorite movie character's favorite movie be? Favorite movie character's favorite movie. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I think that I feel like John Wick would really be into like old westerns and like older kung fu movies.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, but like Tarantino style.
Yeah, like the sort of spaghetti western, like really kind of like over the top effects sort of thing.
Yes,
I think he'd really dig that, especially since like the world he lives in is so like grounded, at least to him. Whereas like those movies are very heightened sense of reality, much like John Wick is, but. I think he's kind of old school in his tastes,
Oh yeah, no. Well, he's there's a certain it's like a fine wine, Like you run across a couple guys that like their wine kind of sewers.
Oh yeah.
Well, so like, but they like you've heard of what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you the best stuff, but it's like you've heard of that baseball card, you've heard of that wine. John Wick has a finer appreciation, so it wasn't who was batting fourth on Murder's Row. He gets into who was batting eighth and why that guy kept up the New York Yankees in 1926 and won this, do it all, right? Like he's like telling you about like the kung fu movie that inspired the kung fu movie that everyone else talks about.
Yeah,
like that's what I'm saying. Like he's got the finer appreciation for those films. But like you throw it on and you wouldn't see what he sees.
Yeah,
like you'd be like, man, this is really boring. And then he like gets into like, no, look at yeah.
It's funny because I think Keanu Reeves himself does kind of have an appreciation for films of that ilk because. He directed a movie, and I haven't seen it yet, but it's called The Man of Tai Chi, where I think it's like the one and only movie he's directed, and it's a kung fu movie, and I think it's very much inspired by like those older, sort of like, kind of like Japanese kung fu, like sort of like a Bruce Lee inspired type of thing, Where
That's what I'm saying. Like I think like because you got to think of like Kill Bill. Like that's like Tarantino's pulling a lot of that inspiration from what he saw when he was a kid.
Oh yeah, I feel like Peter and Paul from Funny Games, they would be into some sick shit, right?
Wow, so that's your number 2 characters, like on who you're gonna. Boy, Funny Games really did a number on you.
Oh, it did. It's doing a number on Megan too. Every time I reference it. I started playing the song from it today in the car, and she just turned it off immediately.
The Screamo one, where they're like, and then the family's just kind of looking around.
They're in the car, and they're just like talking about like Beethoven and like all this classical music and all that shit, and then like, she just like immediately shut it off. Yeah, I feel like they would be into like a Serbian film or like, you know, Salo, 120 Days in Sodom, or like some shit like that.
I was about to say, there you go. You're
like actual snuff movies or something. I feel like they might.
The real ones.
The real ones.
Oh, dude, wait till we watch Cold in July.
I don't know what that is, but oh boy, that sounds riveting.
Not that any one of those buzzwords caught my attention.
Yeah. What about you? Favorite movie characters, favorite movie?
So the first one that popped in my head was Daniel Plainview.
I was gonna say him.
But I feel like his favorite movie would be he'd watch There Will Be Blood as a documentary.
Yeah.
So he'd watch himself.
About himself. Yeah, biopic about himself.
Yeah.
Or something.
It would be like, you know, if JFK had a documentary come out and watch the doc on JFK. Like it's not an actor, it's just JFK being himself and he's watching it. So that's what I was thinking about Plainview. I was like, I don't know what else he'd probably get into something like like his humor would probably be like Tom and Jerry humor, you know, very kiddish, like very like physical,
like
comedy.
He like slapstick a little bit.
Yeah, like he would definitely like the Three Stooges probably would like rip roaring time, but if he found out anyone liked it, he would buy it and then immediately can everyone. You got the Big Lebowski, the Dude. And I was trying to think about him, and I was like, I really feel like he'd just be like into nature docs.
Yeah, because he's stoned all the time.
Yeah. So, and it'd be like the old Nat Geos that didn't have the talking heads on it or the narration. Like they just followed a cheetah for hours. And like, you know, like you're like, I don't know if this thing's going to pounce off the tree or not. And you just kind of watch it, and then it'd just be like licking another cheetah, you know, and just smoking a doobie or like watching fish.
Yeah.
And then the last one was I feel like it's a copped out. Anton Chigurh.
Oh yeah.
And
I feel like he just wouldn't watch movies.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think he'd be more of like who directed Eraserhead? Is it Finch?
David Lynch.
Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like early like student art films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like kind of the cerebral, like sort of like really experimental early stuff from like directors in like one of their first features.
Testing the limits.
He might I think he might like Darren Aronofsky movies maybe.
That's what but
Requiem
like,
for a Dream specifically.
He doesn't want like the dialogue. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the dude's like so stoned, and he's obviously because he was on the Seattle 7.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to have someone explaining things to him. He's a very smart man. He just chooses the lifestyle he lives. Whereas Chigurh doesn't want to hear anyone talk.
Yeah.
Like his absolute fucking peak physical form is in complete silence. So like he couldn't watch a film because it would make him weak.
Yeah.
You know? So that's why it's all just like, and it just be chaos, like, you know, like Clockwork Orange brainwashing stuff, or like you're saying, like very cerebral, you know, the birth of, you know, a fucking like a pig baby, you know.
It would be like flashes of other different movies kind of amalgamated together. I feel
like of the disturbing, like some disturbing scenes, some like rabbits hopping around, you know. It's just like kind of evicting some sort of emotion out of
like
him.
Maybe the only time he ever experiences a movie is when he's in the same room that a movie's playing after he murders somebody.
Yes. Like because he's getting the rush of that, the joy of the kill.
Yeah, like maybe he like after he shoots somebody in the ahead. He like stops, turns to the TV, looks at it for like maybe 3 seconds, and then walks out.
But it's on mute.
Yeah.
It's never going off. There's never that. Either that or white static. I could definitely see him being a white static guy.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like Tyler Durden would be really into like super indie movies, like ones that you would maybe find on YouTube or like somewhere that does not have a studio attached to it at all because he's so anti-consumer.
I was about to say it's Walk on Water Productions.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Or it's it's 3 student films, you know.
Who knows? His favorite movie could be Transformers, for all we know.
Oh my god! What if it came out and that was like why he does it?
Yeah,
because he's like remember in Dodgeball where he's got the electric on his nipples, So he throws on a big he'll throw on Titanic, and anytime he finds himself enjoying it, he's shocked. It's like shock therapy.
Yeah,
like he's trying to convince himself he doesn't like those films. Because if anyone found out, it
would just completely fall apart. His whole image.
Oh yeah, it would definitely
just ruin everything. I don't think I have any more for that answer or question, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of favorite characters, there's always ones that you can find throughout film.
Yeah.
I those were the first 3. Literally when this thing popped up, like I just loved Plainview. Like another one, Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York. Like those are those two, Jeffrey Lebowski, Anton Chigurh, and talk about a wide range almost. Some of my most favorite characters. I mean, think about fucking Leo and Brad Pitt. And anyways, no, we don't need to go on.
Truman from The Truman Show only watches stuff that's on Charter on demand.
Well, no,
he can't go out and find a theater.
Dude, you talk about B-list, like B movies. Like he's got to watch C movies because he can't watch. Like they couldn't show him Fight Club because he'd be like, well, where's that filmed on the island?
Yeah, Yeah, where does this take place?
Yeah.
So our next question, our first in a set of questions, comes from Jake, and he asks, Stallone's best movie ever. I feel like I don't really have much of an answer for this because there's a lot of his movies that I haven't seen. That's where a lot of my weaknesses come from, is classic movies that I consider old. So Mac.
Oh man,
what
Stallone's best? He's such a one-trick pony for me, and I think I've always been like he's the B side of Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple Stallone movies that I really want to like. I think he's in Tango and Cash. I want to see that. I got to see Cobra. Like I think those would be like one of the ones that I'd be like, yeah, right there. If I have to, like, let's just say I'm picking from the Rocky line of movies, Rocky 4. And I feel like that's just like that's an easy no-brainer.
Okay. What about The Escape Plan with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No, see, that's what so you have to watch 80s Stallone. I don't even like maybe early 90s Stallone.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you can really go from recent memory. Rambo, he's fucking good at Rambo.
Yeah, I've heard Rambo's supposed to be like one of his best ones.
Rambo's Rambo before it gets kind of like Rambo'd out. Even though I will say, like, I'd probably like to. Oh, Driven. Oh, I See You. God, man, memory lane, dude. Driven. He plays as a Formula One race car movie, and he plays like the pit crew of this. Like, it's supposed to be like Days of Thunder, except Formula One.
Yeah.
Might get recommended though.
Yeah, there's a lot of his filmography that I just have not seen. Like I said, a lot of classic movies like
Cliffhanger. Ants.
Yeah, the Rocky movies, the Rambo movies.
Daylight. I watched Copland recently. That one was all right.
Judge Dredd.
Judge Dredd, he's really good in. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with cop out answer. I'm gonna go Rocky 4.
There you go.
Rambo's a good one. I want to see Victory too. Victory, I think he's like in a Nazi imprisonment camp, And it's kind of like The Longest Yard. You ever heard about that? Yeah, there was one with Burt Reynolds, the older one.
Okay.
I think Victory is supposed to be a play on that. They were in Pele's in it, and they're in a Jewish imprisonment camp. Then they got to take on the guards in soccer.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's 1980s Victory. I know. There's so many.
There's so many.
I'd love to talk about these films. It's like, just go watch them.
It's like with me, it's like a brick wall. It's like I get it. I know I need to, but it's like I can't contribute anything in the way of Stallone's filmography.
We were jumping off a building. I'd be floating through clouds, like it'd just be beer and like rainbows. It'd be raining Skittles. I'd be plummeting down there to Gummy Bear Island. I just land in the Gummy Bear and I have to eat my way out. And it's just slow movie. You're just falling. It'd be like The Matrix, except all just green.
Yeah.
That's what you hear when you hear Stallone.
Yeah. I just think of testosterone. Testosterone Stallone. When I hear Sylvester Stallone.
I mean, that's come on. You think Victory's filled with testosterone?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
That's true. Well,
for all I know, it could be. His next question in this set of questions.
Yes.
And this is definitely one that I cannot answer. T. Philly versus Boner in a Oklahoma drill. Who wins? I think this was definitely so. This was pre Sam being on the podcast.
Yeah, and this is Jake played at Ferris, so okay. I got to hang out with him. We became friends there. Sam played with him. So those two guys are old football players. Sam actually did a podcast with T. Philly. Like they did 2 episodes, maybe 3.
Oh,
it's like literally Sam just roasting this guy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was one of the. Yeah, they tried though. So I don't know. I never got to see Bradley play. So I'm gonna go T. Philly just because I think he had the grits.
All right,
Boner's not gonna like hearing that though, and I've just put myself out. But that's what I'd go with. I'd be curious to hear Sam's thought. Maybe.
I think you're right.
Yes.
I'm gonna nod my head in agreement. His next question, his last question in this set, is Sam Elliott the best underrated actor out there?
Ooh. Interesting
question. I don't have much in the way of experience with Sam Elliott. I think I've seen him only in The Big Lebowski and Ghost Rider.
Man, you are so bad with movies.
Hey, dude, I'm trying to get better. There's only so much time I have in the day to watch a movie. Sometimes I don't even have time in the week to watch a movie, but I still do my best effort. But I don't know. I feel like Sam Elliott's one of those actors where like he's good at what he does, but I can't like. Does he ever do anything in the way of a role that's not really playing himself, or like someone who isn't like kind of a my name's Sam Elliott. What do you want from me?
Yeah, I think he's been typecast.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the harder ones once you kind of develop that iconic. Like, if you're going to see a movie that's starring Sam Elliott, you're going to go see it because Sam Elliott's in it.
Yeah.
But I think...
Like, you're going to get Sam Elliott with it. It's not like you're going to... I don't think Sam Elliott could play Brendan Fraser's role in The Whale if he was, like, cast into that movie.
Maybe, I'm not going to... I don't want to sit here. He does... Like, he's in A Star Is Born. And he plays Cooper's brother, and he, like... Dude, the guy's got chops.
Yeah.
I think it's just... Have you ever seen A Star Is Born?
No.
Yeah, it's... Well, don't... It's a good movie. It's very... It might get dusty.
The new one?
With Cooper and...
Lady Gaga?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really... I've seen it twice, man. It's really good. And Sam Elliott... It's... Because, yes, you think Sam Elliott with the big southern drawl and all... Or whatever you want to... his kind of... ranch side voice, but like he's got chops. I just think what happens is Jude Law saw this. Jude Law, when he came out with a bunch of movies in the mid 2000s, started getting typecast for being the love interest / kind of quirky henchman, and he took off acting for 2 years or 3 years and came out with this really weird movie that he stars as like this foul-mouthed Brit that just gets out of jail, fucks everything that moves, and robs people for like pennies on the dollar just to get by in life. Like he's like a low class hustler.
Yeah.
And like you get typecast like that, and he was talking about it. He said, you get typecast like that. It's hard to break that mold because when the studio hires you, they hire you for that specific reason. And it's like what Leonardo had to go through in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You play the job, or you play the what do they call him? The guy, the villain that gets punched. You go from being the, whatever. I can't remember the exact term they use, but like you get typecast in that role and that's it. And then he walks out, he starts crying. I think that's what happened to Sam Elliott. But no, Jake, I'm going to say off right now. No, I don't think he's like the most underrated actor, but I do think if he would have got more shots, he could have did pretty good. I liked him in A Star Is Born, and he sold it well.
Yeah.
So.
Much like Sylvester Stallone, I'll have to dive into more of what he's in.
It will hold you to your word.
Yeah, okay. Well, I got a little scared. Our next question comes from Eric. He has 2 questions. His first one is, all-time best movie endings in your personal record book. I got, I think, a decent answer for this one. I love the ending of Nocturnal Animals. I think it's one of the best movie endings that I've seen in a movie.
Can't ruin it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, can't give it away, but I think it's very fitting for how the movie plays out and what it leads up to. Very fitting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Meathead Mac. I have to go with Infinity War.
Okay.
But like been watching movies for a while. Sometimes endings grab you, sometimes they there's always a little bit. That's the first time I've watched a movie. I wanted more once it ended. I was confused by how it ended. Didn't know where it was going. And not only that, with how big of a movie it was, they have the balls to just stop.
Yeah.
I thought, and granted, I wasn't following any of the Marvel news, or I didn't know what was going on, or this, that, and the other. So I was kind of green, walking into all that. But
yeah,
I got done watching that, and I remember when that whole fight's going on towards the end, thinking that there was way more time in the film than what there was. And I've it's been a while since I've turned off a movie and was like just sat there and like had an itch. Like I think I threw it back on later that day again. Because I just was expecting something completely different. It came out of left field, and I thought it took balls to end it like that. But there could have, I didn't know what was going on, so I don't want people coming at me like, you fucking idiot, like they already had it end. I didn't fucking know. I'm going to tell you that right now. I had no clue. So that's why it was cool to me.
I definitely see that. I think there's a lot of...
Actually, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 2 has a fantastic ending.
Oh, I agree. I like how that I like how that ended quite a bit. One of my favorite parts of that movie. I think Darren Aronofsky has really good endings for a lot of his movies. Like The Whale, I love the ending.
Okay.
The Wrestler. Black Swan is a really good ending.
Really?
I think so. There was a grimace in Mac's face of disagreement.
No, I don't remember any... Yes, maybe off air we'll say it if I remember correctly. No, I honestly, that movie I really don't remember except how you just don't know when she's gonna go back down on her. So a lot of the
Mac was anticipating the whole time.
There wasn't anticipating. It was more of when do I have to get back up to go to the kitchen?
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want to have to go through that again. So like I think we talked about it. In sex scenes in movies when things happen, there's after the fact a lot of thinking of, is there another one of these? Like that's why I stopped Island of Dr. Moreau, because I was like, I don't want to have another pig baby.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and have this ruin my movie watching experience wondering if they're going to be animals
just
having
on
sex.
Edge the whole time.
Yeah, but you're not even thinking about the film. So honestly, I just want to say I don't really remember the ending of that, but I think I know what it was, but I won't say it on air.
Ooh, really another good ending. It's a very iconic ending too. One where like I think the scene in the ending precedes like the rest of the movie almost is Dead Poet Society.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah. I don't know what else is there, Mackie boy.
In terms of good endings,
yeah. Or like your favorites.
Most of them don't end on the cliff note. Like Nocturnal Animals was a good one. I think I remember more of the bad movie endings because I have more of a critique for them. Like if a movie ends well, I just feel like it's a great encapsulation of Like John Wick Chapter 4, I really like that ending.
Yeah.
You know, like there are movies I that's what I'm saying. For me, if it's a movie ending that sticks with me, I know that it made a difference on me. Because I'll tell you the worst fucking movie ending, No Country for Old Men. There you go.
I would love to rewatch that movie at some point. Just because I think I've only seen it all the way through one time.
Oh, it's so good.
And it's been years and years and years.
Dude, I have, when it's late night Mac mode, that's the go-to film I put on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any other answer. So we can move on to our last question from Eric. And it is predictions on Barbie/Oppenheimer opening weekend showdown.
Ooh.
Good question. I think I don't know how many people are going to be like me personally, where I'm going to try to see both movies in the same weekend. I think that
there probably will. Well, I'm not taking anything away from you.
Yeah.
Not a lot. You're probably in the minority of the
probably.
group.
I think Oppenheimer is going to beat Barbie.
You do.
I think so.
Interesting.
Because I think
this is a big time showdown.
It is. It really is. Showdown, or like, I don't know. There's like I said, maybe there's some people like me that are going to see both, maybe not, but I think that in terms of having a big name for himself, like Christopher Nolan has established a name for himself big enough to where, like, I think he could be like the box office draw and like people go see his movie because he's attached to it. Barbie, I think, while it's very interesting what it's kind of shaping up to be, and like just what I don't know what the movie's going to be like, I feel like there's more of a limited audience with that movie in terms of like marketing and like who the movie's for, like how accessible it might be, because like it's a Barbie movie, so like,
right,
are kids gonna go see it, or are people gonna go see it because they think it's gonna be ironic because it has like Ryan Gosling in it as Ken, and they have like all these tongue-in-cheek jokes like, oh, we're gonna have a beach off, no, I'm gonna beat you off, or like whatever,
right?
Like, I feel like there's not as much of an encompassing audience for Barbie as there is for Oppenheimer.
Very, very interesting.
But I guess Oppenheimer is also rated R, so that automatically limits the audience right there as well. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I think Oppenheimer's going to beat
I'm
it
gonna
out.
I'm going to say Mission Impossible takes both.
Oh, bold claim. Yes. Maybe not necessarily bold. I mean, they've made...
Actually, now I think about it, cop-out, you didn't even pick one of the two that we talked about.
It makes sense, though. Mission Impossible makes quite a bit of money.
Well, because it's PG-13 and it's action, and you have literally anyone from 13 to 45 could go and see that film. Any male, you know. Or
absolutely.
female. I'm not going to say anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone.
A wide demographic.
Yes.
Whereas like both Oppenheimer and Barbie, it's a little more limited.
Well, because I'm thinking like, all right, so you got Oppenheimer, you got the Nolan fan crowd, right? So they're going to see it. Like, I'd be very interested like how much Tenet grows, because Tenet has not of the same vibe, right? Because obviously Oppenheimer will come through and it's going to be like a linear storyline, or we're gonna have the easy plot to follow.
Well, that and Tenet had COVID to deal with too.
True. But like, you kind of have the same maybe issues that you have with character recognition, you know, not having the box office names.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not going to say Cillian Murphy isn't, but like, you know, I would say probably 1 out of every 3 people you show them, they would be able to tell you his name. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm interested because Barbie's had a more like guerrilla style marketing in terms of the memes and the gifs and getting on social media and promoting a lot of like what you like, some of that colorful joking, you know.
It's very tongue-in-cheek.
And that's why I'm curious, is it a satire of Barbie, like, you know, that we're gonna give them brains and put them in the world, you know, or are they gonna run loose with it? But like I said, it's PG-13.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where, like, what the angle of the movie specifically is and where it goes. Just because, like, they've had, like, all this guerrilla style marketing, like you said, but I still can't exactly tell how the movie's gonna be. You know,
I think that's the mystery behind it. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it's kind of where we're gonna. we don't want to give it away because then people will make too many claims about what it is.
Yeah.
Like we'll just give you kind of this is what it's supposed to look like and where it could be going, and it lets you. I'm more interested in it now than I was when I heard it was coming out. I got like when I heard Gosling was in it, I was like, all right, like he likes to do some like good films, besides Only God Forgives.
Yeah.
So you got to think him being attached, like they'd have fun, and it looks like it's kind of fun, and they're both kind of at those stages in their careers whether they don't have to. This isn't winning any Academy Awards, or maybe it does, So I'm actually gonna go with Barbie though. I think that's why I'm just curious with Tenet, like because. If Tenet was made for... How much was Tenet made for?
It was not cheap.
That's why I'm thinking it was like $150 million or something.
I know Tenet was made for more than Oppenheimer was. Because I think I looked it up before.
Well, they crashed a B-47 into a fucking...
Airport.
Air hangar, airport. So, like, he had to buy freaking half of New Zealand.
It was $205 million.
And it probably made, like, what did it make statewide? Not like, because the worldwide stuff I have such a hard time with.
Wikipedia never tells me that specific answer.
Really?
Yeah.
You never go to IMDb.
I go to Wikipedia because that's all I need from you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, you got, hey, Davis, great question, too.
Yes, thank you.
You got $205 million, without having, like, big name actors in it. Which is probably where they save some of that money from.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest was Arpat, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, but he wasn't like yes and no.
It was before the Batman, so really he had only done like kind of like smaller indie or. That's
what I'm saying. Like his indie career was taken off, but it's not enough to where he can go in and say, "I want 40% less speaking lines and double my salary."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this thing, no way. Oh, see, that's what I'm saying. Fuckers. Budget $205 million. Opening weekend $9 million.
Ooh.
Gross $58 million. Worldwide goes $365 million. Now we did say COVID played into this.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
How about this? One more shot at it. I'm gonna do you one up. Dunkirk wasn't rated R.
That was PG-13, I'm pretty sure.
I am too, because I think this is his like first R-rated film. Because that was like one of the things that like people were like talking about.
Yeah.
That were saying like, oh, this is gonna be fucking sick. I love Nolan too, so I'm not sitting here trying to bash on it.
Right.
All right. What do you got? What do you think the budget for Dunkirk was?
I'm gonna guess $125 million.
Close. One on the nose.
Ooh.
$100 million.
Okay.
Grossed.
Grossed. Like this is like total worldwide gross?
I'm gonna say statewide. I'm down with the worldwide gross, but I just don't know what it means. I don't know what it means, Basil. Because
well, statewide is just the U.S., right? Whereas worldwide
that
is
one I do know. That's why I stick with it. Because that one I do got. The worldwide one I don't know. Like they throw a bunch of numbers at me, and I'm like, I'm
gonna guess statewide it probably made like $200 million.
Very close, dude. You've been close on both of these. 189, 740.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but PG-13 difference, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna say I'm going Barbie. I do think that there's gonna be a big draw for this, but I think because of the 17 rated, Yeah. And it's like, dude, it's a bunch of nerds doing nerdy shit.
Bunch of nerds. Who wants to see that nerd shit? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
We'll find out.
That's a pun.
And we'll probably discuss both of those movies in whichever episode that ends up being.
It's around around someone I know's birthday.
Oh, nice. Yeah, happy birthday to whoever that is.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan picks a certain day of the year to do it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What a birthday treat. Those two movies.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for leaving questions for us. We appreciate it. Speaking of movies, I get to make a film pick recommendation.
Boom.
I'm gonna look through my list because I haven't fully decided what I want to recommend yet. I do kind of have a like theater pick if you wanted to go with it, see where your thoughts were on Asteroid City, because I know that comes out next week.
God. Yeah.
Mac is thrilled about that.
Gideon, we love you.
Yes, very Gideon influenced pick. I think this kind of has helped my decision a little bit. So I feel like there's a lot of movies, as we've talked about with the questions, that I haven't seen that are classics that I know I need to eventually, as someone who loves movies and who loves film. And there's a big one that I haven't seen that I know I need to get around to eventually, and this will only help force me to watch it.
Just do it. Rip the Band-Aid.
I'm going to recommend 2001, A Space Odyssey.
God damn it, Kyle.
You're excited about this one, I can tell.
Watched it. I've seen it.
How long ago?
I saw it in 2014 or 2015.
So it's been a minute. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been
I
some
wonder
time.
why. But yeah, no, it's a good. Some people claim. I have a very hard time when people tell me that they claim this is their number one film of all time.
And I'm curious how I'll feel about it, because that's exactly the type of stuff that I've heard also.
I think and I could be way off, and I think tunes may have changed, but this was before like being hipster was like being hipster. So like if you wanted someone to know that you watch film, you tell them that you saw that, and then you challenge them or you talk about it, and it like leads into conversation about filmmaking.
Yeah.
I would never say that. So like I don't care. I will say, I mean, it's thought provoking, and there's definitely enough stuff to talk about, and I am very interested into your thoughts and some of your takes on it, because none of it's ever been laid out and said this is what I was filming for. You know, so in terms of that, it's very good fodder. It's just a 19, and it still holds up relatively decently. I mean, it's not, like,
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, you could tell it's from the fucking 60s, but like it's not as well as Dr. Moreau held up production wise. Like,
yeah.
Without the prosthetics, you might think that this was a 2000s film.
Well, that's a big compliment for it, since it is like, what, nearly 50 years old?
I think going on, yeah, it's got to be over 50 going on 60, so somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
I don't I think it was 68 it was made.
Okay. So yeah, we'll dive into 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Man, yeah.
Directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Go on Odyssey.
We are. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled for that, and also we'll probably talk about Asteroid City.
Are we going to see it? So that's we'll just say both of those?
Yes.
Let's just cement it. I guess they tie in.
We'll
space
cement it.
And shit.
That's kind of why I picked Space Odyssey too, also.
Yeah.
Just because, space and all the space things.
Cool.
Space. Have you ever seen that clip of Tim Curry from that video game? I think it's like some strategy military game where he's like kind of superimposed in the game itself. So it's actually him in like this military outfit, and he's supposed to be this Russian commander.
Oh, really?
And he has this line where he goes,
is it Red Alert?
I think it is Red Alert.
Oh, then I've definitely played that game. That's like one of my favorite PC games.
Yeah, there's a line in it where he goes, I'm going to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space. And he looks like he's trying to stifle laughter because of how fucking ridiculous it is.
Oh yeah, they had those cutscenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is Red. Oh my god, he was in that?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's Tim Curry.
Holy shit. He played the Russian commander.
Yeah. I just love saying space because I just love referencing that.
Oh, he's got I wish his left eye could roll like a lottery, like a lottery machine, and that right eye could just look up. Like he's got such a bizarre look, like he could pull that off.
Oh, absolutely. Just really cartoonish in the real world.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't want to be spoiled for either of those movies, be sure to watch them before episode 49.
Dude, we're getting close.
We're getting to the dirty 50s or whatever it is.
Is that really what they are?
Maybe. I don't know.
I'll ask someone that's 50.
We'll have to take a bath before we record that one, just so they're not that dirty.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much. You can find us on www.neoncrewpodcast.com. Also, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. That helps us towards our goal of maybe possibly monetizing the channel. I don't know.
Yeah. That'd be sick. 50 cents.
That would be sick. We need 1,000 subscribers in order to monetize it, and we're at 259. So if you guys
we got a little way to go.
We got a little ways to go, but we might get there eventually. But if you guys haven't already, if you subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. Thank you in advance if you decide to do that. Be sure to keep a lookout on our Facebook and YouTube community social media pages. I will often post audience engagement stuff there and different memes and things like that every once in a while. So, and also, if you haven't and you want a nice t-shirt or a crew neck or whichever, be sure to go to our Etsy page for some merch. That would help us out big time as well. And last but not least, Mac, what do we say?
WWTHD.
Bye, everyone.